My name is Elise Lopez, and today I'm going to start in childhood because that's where everything starts. So my parents were divorced when I was very little, like 2. I don't ever remember them together. And since this is like about my custody battle with my mom, I feel like it's important to see how she was in the custody battle with my dad because it's very similar. And even though I'm her daughter and he's her ex. So they divorced when I was 2, and I don't remember them together. I have a couple older siblings, so I'm the youngest of 4. My oldest sister is 9 years older than me, and then my brother is 7 years older than me, and then I have another sister that's a year and a half older than me. And so they kind of remember the family together. I don't. And during that divorce, my mom basically kicked my dad out of the house, and she was a stay-at-home mom, so she didn't have any income or anything like that. So he left willingly.
And were your siblings living at home at the time? Like all of them together? Okay.
All of them together. Yep. And like I said, my sister at the time was, I think 10 or 11, my oldest sister. So they remember vividly the whole family life. And I don't. And they remember vividly the divorce, which was very, I don't know, I don't know how to say the word.
Traumatic?
Tumultuous? Whatever.
It
was hard.
That's a big word.
Yeah, it was hard, and it was traumatic. Like one of my first memories is of that divorce, and I wasn't even sure I was going to tell this story, but I guess I am. So my mom kicked my dad out of the house, and he hadn't seen us kids for like a month, and from going with every day with your family, and he's a very Hispanic man, so family's very important to him. His wife, everything was very important to him, and my mom didn't let him see us for probably about a month. And he drove by the house and saw that my older sister, my one that's a year and a half older than me, was playing outside. So he hopped the fence and went to go pick her up. And she ran to him and he picked her up. And then my brother started running outside, and I guess I started running outside. I don't remember that part. And her boyfriend at the time, who was the next door neighbor, she says nothing happened until they actually divorced, but we don't know. My dad says something different. But we'll go with her story on that. So she got with him after they divorced, and he saw my dad in the yard and started walking up to him with my sister in his arms and decided to punch him in the face.
Your dad punched your dad?
Mm-hmm. In the face when he was holding his 3-year-old daughter. And so he put her down. And then I guess I was running out there, and my brother was running out to go see my dad. And my mom scooped us up, put us back in the house, and they just started fighting. So my dad basically beat his ass. He said his face looked like hamburger meat.
Oh,
yeah. So my dad was a framer at the time in construction, so he was in very good shape.
Mm-hmm.
And her boyfriend at the time was older, probably like in his 60s, and my mom was like 30.
So did your mom and I guess her boyfriend at the time, the neighbor, did they not want you guys to see your dad?
No, my mom didn't know.
And did you know why, or you didn't really know?
Well, I've heard stories.
Okay.
My mom, and I think it was the boyfriend kind of putting things in her head, but she thought that my dad was hiding money. She thought that my dad was part of the Mexican mafia and was following them. And I've heard that he was on drugs and got her on drugs, on meth. And so she was just kind of out there.
Okay.
And but yeah, so they didn't want my dad to see the kids at all. And so that happened, and it was dramatic. The part that I remember was getting taken into the house, and my oldest sister, the 11-year-old, was banging on the window, yelling at them to stop, stop, stop. And she broke the window, and then I guess it shattered everywhere, and she took us into the back room, into my parents' room. And this is what I remember. And she was just rubbing my back, telling me that everything was going to be okay and not to worry about it. And then, and I guess my sister remembers that we locked my mom out of the house. She just told me this recently, that we locked my mom out of the house, and she came in, and we were all scared in the bedroom or whatever. But I just remember my older sister telling me that it was going to be okay.
Yeah.
And then after that, she moved us into the next door neighbor's house. So our house that we lived in since I was born was just empty. And I remember my sister telling me that they used to go over there and get like stuff or clothes or things like that. And there was just dust all over the house. And they didn't know, well, we didn't know why we couldn't stay at our house anymore. Right. And, but yeah, it was just my mom hating my dad, hating my dad.
And how was your relationship with your mom?
I was always like a people pleaser. So she was always like high anxiety. She had to work a lot. She was a stay-at-home mom for 15 years, or I'm sorry, they were together for 15 years. So she was a stay-at-home mom for 11 years. Okay. And she had to go work. And so I was always like mommy's little girl growing up, and the good one, and the one who kept her calm and happy. And but I don't remember that until I was like a little bit older. Okay. But during the divorce, so it took them, I think, about 3 years, and she wanted everything. She wouldn't give it up. She wanted the house. She subpoenaed my dad's business with his dad, all of their records, looking for the hidden money and hidden real estate that she thought he had, and he didn't have anything. He was a construction worker who didn't have anything. And we went to court for years, and we were in custody court. And back in the day, this is like late 80s. And I was born in 85, so this is like 88, 89, 90. And they used to have a daycare in the courts. And I always remember saying that we were in the newspaper. It might have just been like a court publication or whatever. My sister was like, we were in the New York Times or something like that. And I was like, I don't think so. It was probably a court publication, but we were there so often in the court daycare that we would bring apples every day. And we were in the paper for that, for being at court so often. But that was like, I think we got one night a week with my dad, and every other weekend. And that was the visitation schedule that I grew up with. And I remember him having to go back to court every year to get my brother to play the Little League. So he was already in Little League, and my mom didn't want any extra time with us and my dad. Yeah. And so he had to take her to court every year just to get the courts okay so that he could go to Little League. Right. And so then that happened.
Blue.
Hello. But yeah, so my mom had to work a lot, and she was rarely home, and I do give her credit for that. Like, she's given me my work ethic. Right. And she was very hardworking single mom, but that meant she just wasn't home. Mm-hmm. She didn't her job was to provide. And she would like wake up in the morning, and she'd have 4 a.m. shifts, and she would wake me and my younger sister up and do our hair and get us dressed for school and let us lay back down. And then my older siblings were in charge of like getting us to the bus or walking us to school or whatnot. And then there was a time, so my mom went into city bus driving, and there was a time probably when I was like, I want to say 8 or 9, where she drove the bus that dropped us off at school. So she found a way, mm-hmm. to bring us to school, even if it was on the city bus. And so I commend her for that. She worked really hard, and as a single mom of 4. Right. And but yeah, that just meant she wasn't there. And then my brother eventually moved in with my dad. He was the first one to leave her house, and which was natural. I think he was like 13. Okay. He's the only boy in a house full of girls. Right. So that was natural. And then once my brother moved out, and my sister was way older than us, so she was in high school, and she ended up moving out when I think she was 16 or 17. So I was probably about 8, 9, okay. Something like that, whatever the math is on that. And so we were, me and my older sister, the one that's a year and a half older, we were just left to our own devices. We were latchkey kids. We had to figure out our own way to school and back. Because once the older kids were gone, there was nobody to walk us to the bus stop. So figure out the bus time, get yourself to the bus stop, or ask your friends' parents. We did that a lot. Ask our friends' parents for rides to school. And if we didn't pack our own lunch, we didn't have a lunch. You know, like she was just not there. And I know she loved us, but yeah, she wasn't there. We had to figure out, like, we learned how to forge her name on our school paperwork very young, because she would, when she was home, she was sleeping, and like if we had like homework that needed to be signed or anything, we would shove it under her door at night, and then she would sign it when she got home and left it on the kitchen table. So we never saw her. And then if we had to wake her up for like a signature that we didn't get or anything, like, you don't wake mom up. You know, you don't wake her up when she's sleeping. So we figured out, me and my closest sister figured out how to take care of ourselves very, very fast. And so then when we were about, I don't know, 13, 14, I'm going to say 13, my mom, so her original boyfriend that she left my dad for died.
Okay.
About like, I want to say probably like a year after the divorce, like very soon after the divorce, maybe like 2 years after the divorce. And she was devastated. That was the love of her life and all that. But when we were about 13, 14, she got a new boyfriend. And we're from San Diego, and her new boyfriend lived in LA. And so she would go to work on Friday morning, and after work on Friday, she would drive to LA and stay all weekend with her boyfriend and drive from LA to work on Monday and wouldn't come home till after work on Monday. So Friday morning to Monday night, we had a 4-bedroom house to ourselves, 13 and 14 years old, and we started partying. We started drinking and having everybody, our house was the party house, and everybody knew my mom wasn't home or, you know. And then we went to a private high school at that time, and with our church, they had kids from all over the state. Actually, there was multiple states like Arizona, Texas, Northern California, and they had dorms there for the out-of-state kids. And so we would sign out some of our friends for the weekend, and like they're coming to, you know, a church house. And we would get a ride home from one of our other friends' moms and bring home, you know, the boarding school kids and just party it up all weekend. And that was just known that was our house. That was my mom. And we didn't go to church on Sundays. And then we would just get them back to school on Monday. And that was like when my sister was in high school. I was a freshman. So yeah, like 14, 15. And so that was the beginning of my partying years. And when I was 14, about to turn 15, so it was like a month before my 15th birthday, at one of these parties, I met a guy, and I really liked him. And I think I lied to him and told him that I was older than I was, because I was 14 at this house party, at my house party. And I think he was 18 at the time. He was enlisting in the military. And where I live in San Diego, I live in North County, San Diego. And there's a Marine base and a Navy base. And like within, I want to say 30 minutes of us. So he was enlisting in the Navy, had like his Marine friends, buddies with him or whatever. We ended up hitting it off. As much as the 18 and 14-year-old can. we were into each other. Yeah. And he ended up taking off from my house and going down the street to one of his buddies' house. And it was an apartment, so probably much older. I don't even know how old he was, probably like in his mid-20s or something. And I liked him, and me and my friend Melanie were like, well, we're going to go to his house party. So we went over there, and excuse me. And yeah, so I ended up losing my virginity to that man. And Sorry, this is the hard part.
Yeah, you're okay. Take your time.
But
At least you got blue.
Yes. And he's purring. But yeah, so I ended up losing my virginity to him in this stranger's house, in this stranger's bed. And I fell asleep, and I was drunk and acting a fool, acting like a 14 pretending to be a 16-year-old would. Mm-hmm. I probably told him I was older than that, but we'll give him the benefit of the doubt. And but I ended up falling asleep in this bed, and he left me there. Mm-hmm. And I was still with my friend, but she was in the other bedroom with her boyfriend at the time. And I woke up to multiple men lifting me off the bed and putting me on the ground. And there was they sexually assaulted me, lots of hands, lots of kissing, and I froze. And I didn't know what to do. I thought that I would just pretend to be asleep and it would stop and it'd be over. And it wasn't. And I heard somebody, one of the guys, I don't know how many there was probably like 2 or 3. And one of the guys go for his belt buckle. And I was like, oh shit. Like that's not happening. So I started stirring and like pushing him off and like pretending that I was waking up, and then they left, and immediately I got up and I went into the other room, which was, and like they're all there, like in the living room and in the kitchen. It was a small apartment and 2-bedroom. And so I immediately come out of the bedroom and go to my friend's room where she's at, which is like down a tiny little hallway, and there's like a room on this side and like a bathroom on this side. And and I wake her up and I was like, dude, we have to go now. Like we have to go. And I didn't tell her what happened. I just told her, get me out of here. I want to go home. Let's go. And she was like, no, I don't want to go. And I was like, whatever, like I'm out of here. Mm-hmm. And as soon as I closed the door, the owner of the apartment, like I said, he was probably at least in his 20s. I mean, how old do you have to be to get your own apartment?
Right. Yeah.
And I came out of the room and I was closing the door behind me, and he was standing right behind me, and he shoved me into the bathroom and essayed me in there. And like I said, I was 14 and I froze. Again, I didn't know what to do. And I talk about this because I've been on my healing journey for like 4 or 5 years now. Mm-hmm. And the first time I talked about this was probably about 2 years ago. So I kept it inside for like 20 years. And it's something that, like, as I go on in my story, you'll see it goes back to I'm a freezer, right. And I always judged myself for that. Like
I was gonna say, I think that a lot of people don't talk about things like this because they tend to blame themselves or to feel ashamed around it, which should not be the case.
Exactly.
So it's important to own your story, even if it's not one that is a good one. Like you should still be able to speak out about it and be honest and open about what happened to you if that's what you choose to do, and not ever feel like it was your fault.
Right. And I felt like that for 20 years.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people do, because I think we're taught that you have to say no. Mm-hmm. And if you didn't say no,
then yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. You wanted it, or somehow you condoned it, or how was he supposed to know?
Or because you lied.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, even then I was 14.
Right.
I did not look 18 or in my 20s.
But the thing is, even if you were actually 21, 31, it doesn't matter what age you are. That's or what true. Age that person is. Nobody should be, forced into doing anything that they don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem regardless of age or lying or anything.
Right.
It's total disrespect.
What my therapist says.
Yeah. Well, shit, sign me up.
Right? I love my therapist, by the way. She's so awesome. Good. But yeah, like even, she's like, you can be 40 years old and say no halfway through, and that is you taking back your consent. Mm-hmm. And I think as girls, and I know especially in my generation, it was almost like that happened to everybody. Like, you're not special, or that wasn't, you just deal with it. Mm-hmm. And so I did. I dealt with it with drugs. So that happened probably about a month right before my 15th birthday. And by 15, I was full blown addicted to meth. And that's how I dealt with it. And actually, let me go back real quick. So after that happened, and he essayed me in the bathroom, I hold on.
You're fine.
I froze and I didn't know what to do. And like, I acted like I went out back into the living room where everybody else was. And of course, like everybody knew, I feel, I can't say for sure, I feel that like everybody there knew what just happened. Right. I mean, there was multiple guys in the first bedroom and there wasn't that many people there. And then all of a sudden I'm gone and the owner of the apartment's gone. Like, come on, like they knew and didn't do anything. And, but it was still like dark out and I didn't really know where I was at the time. I knew the vicinity of where I was because it's like, it's a popular like apartment track, should I say. It's a bunch of apartments. So I kind of knew where I was, but didn't know what apartments I was in. And it was dark. And the guy wouldn't let me use his phone. This is like, I think before cell phones. I think if you had a cell phone, you were like cool and could only use it after 9 or on the weekends.
Got it.
But yeah, he wouldn't let me use his phone to call my mom. And obviously I think he was scared that I was going to call my mom and come get him. Right. And so I had to wait till it was light out. And then I walked and I called my mom from a payphone and I had hickeys all over my neck. Oh, God. And she didn't know where I was, like at this point, I don't know. She was very mad at me. So I don't know if I was gone for a minute and I was already partying at this point. I wasn't on meth. I was just a rebellious teenager who had no authority in their life. And so she picked me up and immediately started laying into me. Like the hickeys on my neck. I looked like a slut. How could I allow anybody to do that to my body? Don't you know that's your body? And so immediately I was like, this isn't safe. I'm not telling her what just happened. So, and I think to this day, she doesn't know what happened. Okay. I told my dad probably about, like I said, 2 years ago. And then I think I told my best friend probably around that time, about 2 years ago, maybe a little bit longer.
And did you ever tell the girl that was there with you?
So I found out later that she knew. Well, she didn't know, like in the moment. Okay. She found out later. And her best friend came up to me probably about a couple months after that and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I heard what happened to you.
But she never said anything.
No, I still haven't talked to her since. Yeah, I don't talk to Melanie.
Yeah. Probably for the best.
Yes. But yeah, her best friend, Melanie's best friend, came up to me a couple months after that and like apologized for everything. Like, and at that point, which is crazy to look back on, I totally dismissed it. I was like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. I was so drunk. I don't even remember. And she's like, well, I heard that every guy there had his way with you. And I was like, oh no, like that definitely didn't happen. Like, I don't even remember that. I think I would remember that when the whole time I remembered. I knew what happened. Right. But it's that sense of denial and shame and like it was my fault. I put myself in that situation. So like the pattern of denying that happened, 20 years worth of denying. Like even the guy that I consensually lost my virginity to hit me up through the years. I think he first hit me up on MySpace back when that was a thing. And he apologized to me for leaving me there. And he's a good guy. I don't blame him for anything. I followed him there, and he just left. Like that's all he did. He just left. But he's felt guilt over that. And he's reached out to me a couple of times through the years and apologized. And like I said, I was still partying and, about 15 years old, probably about a year after that happened, I did meth for the first time with my friend's mom. So one of my friend's moms, she was a recovering addict to meth. And I think she was clean for a couple years. But she definitely, condoned our partying, buy us alcohol. She's one of those moms. And she was drunk one night. And at this point, I was driving. So I used to steal my mom's car when she was sleeping too, steal my dad's car. So I didn't have a license, but I knew how to drive. So my friend's mom got really drunk one night and asked me to drive her to her friend's house to go pick up money for more booze or whatever she wanted to do. And she couldn't drive, but she knew I could. And we drove to the next town over, probably about 15 minutes away. And she got the money from her friend, and she had me stop at the gas station, and she saw some random dude walking through the gas station parking lot. And this is at like 1:00 in the morning. And she yells out the door to him and was like, "Hey, do you have any meth?" And he was like, "What?" And comes over to the car, and I'm in the driver's seat, and he comes over to the car, gets in the back seat, and is like, "Yeah, what do you want?" And I was like, "Okay." Just like that. Just like that. Gosh. And so the money that we had picked up from her friend not 5 minutes before, she just spent on meth at some random gas station in the middle of the night. And so she gets her meth, and the guy hops out, and we're still at the gas station. And immediately she says, "Let's go in the bathroom and do it." And I was like, okay, like I'm 15, 16 at this point. Sure. And she made me do it. So we snorted it, and she broke it out on the bathroom sink, and she told me that I had to, so I wouldn't tell. And from that moment forward, I was just immediately addicted. I dropped out of school, dropped out of high school, got arrested for stealing, had to do community service, was running away all the time. I would be gone for days at a time. And one of my best friends had just turned 18 and I was 16. And she was also using drugs, running the streets with me, getting into all kinds of trouble. And when you're that young in that life, you are so open to the predators. Yeah. Like we were hanging out with 30 and 40-year-old men, and basically using our bodies to get meth. And I wouldn't say, I don't know if I would say that was an SA situation. Now that I'm in my 30s, I'm in my late 30s, I'm almost 40 years old. Definitely, I would say that. But at the time, it was, again, me putting myself in that situation. I didn't think anything wrong with it. I used to tote to older guys, age is just a number. Don't worry, I won't tell on you. It was that type of thing. And me at my age now, if I were to see a man doing that or even hanging out with a fucking teenager, like, what's wrong with you, dude? You know, it was gross, very gross. But back then it was my life. It was normal. But yeah, so, and I was running away a lot, and my whole family was worried about me, constantly telling me, crying, "Oh, I'm worried you're going to end up dead. We're going to get the call. You're going to be in a gutter somewhere." And I got that for a long time. And then I ran away to Washington State from San Diego. Didn't tell anybody. I went with my best friend. We hopped on a Greyhound bus. It took us like 3 days to get there. And she was 18. I wasn't. Her mom knew where we were going, so we told her mom because her dad lived up there. So her mom was sending her to go live with her dad. And I was just like, I'm coming too. Right. Come along for the ride. I'm along for the ride. Yes. So we did that. And I was up there for less than 2 weeks running amok. Her dad was a drug addict too. So we went from one bad situation to another, and just complete running amok. And I was there for less than 2 weeks. And my oldest sister, my mom, and my dad showed up at my best friend's dad's house, this total flop house. Yeah. And we were in the bedroom, and all of a sudden they open the door and it's like my family. And I'm like, oh God, what the hell are you guys? How'd you find me first? Right. Like, and what the hell are you guys doing here? And they didn't explain anything to me. They were just like, you now, like, let's go. Like, you're done. And we're here to pick you up and we're taking you home. And that was it. Like, they didn't cause it, like, obviously that's a scene in and of itself, but they didn't, yell at her dad or make a huge scene. Mm-hmm. It was literally like, we've driven overnight to Washington to come get you. Get in the car. We're going home. Oh, yeah. So I was like, okay. And I think I was 16 at this time. I was 16. And they drove through the night, and I remember they were reading some book to me. My mom and my sister would take turns just reading out loud and driving home on like however long it is from Seattle to San Diego. And they made me sober up within like a couple days of being home. And then all of a sudden my mom like turned to Elise. She wouldn't let me out of her sight, obviously, which I was like, of course. And she started like spoiling me. And she took me to like Target and was like, okay, you need a new bedspread and you need like new pajamas. And it was very meticulous and it was weird to me. And she's like, okay, you need like this many pairs of underwear. And then I needed like 5 pairs of socks. And it was a very meticulous list. But I didn't think anything of it. I was just like, my mom's spoiling me. She's grateful to have me home. She wants to like set up this life for me,
like show me what I'm.
Yeah, like a new chapter. And that's what I thought it was. But it wasn't. Spoiler alert. She got me new bedding, like all kinds of stuff. And then probably about 2 weeks after that, I was sleeping on the couch at my mom's house, and not because I didn't have a bed. I fell asleep on the couch. And I got woken up in the early mornings, probably about like 6 o'clock in the morning, and to 2 strange people, a man and a woman, waking me up on the couch and told me that I was going to come with them. And I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, don't worry, like your parents know, they're aware, they set this up, and you need to go get changed. And I was like, okay. And so I start walking to my bedroom and she's following me. Both of them are following me. And I was like, excuse me, like I need to get changed. Mm-hmm. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I'm going to get changed with you. And I was like, I don't even know you and I don't wear underwear. So I'm going to be naked and I don't want you in my room when I'm changing. Mm-hmm. And she's like, it doesn't work like that. And she came into my room and watched me change naked and everything. And I had no idea what was going on. I was like, what's happening? And at this point, I'm like arguing with them. Like, I'm like, what the hell's happening? I'm not going with you. And she pulls out a pair of handcuffs and she says, we can do this the easy way or we can do this a hard way. And she goes, and if you choose to fight, she's like, I will handcuff you. And either way, you're getting into my car. And I was like, oh my God, like what the fuck is happening? Yeah. And so I'm a freezer and judge myself my whole life for it, but it is what it is. And I'm okay with it now. So I froze and I complied. And I was like, okay, we're not doing this the hard way. And so I walk out and my whole family, all my sisters, both my sisters, my brother, my mom, and my dad are all in the kitchen and they're all just crying. And I start crying and I'm like, what's happening? Like, who are these people? And I'm trying to talk to them and they're not saying anything to me. And they're just kind of ignoring what's happening. So I continue going in the car and there's child locks. She puts me in the back seat. She rolls the window down about this much. And all my stuff, all the new stuff that my mom had just bought me is packed up in this car. And I'm like, oh, fuck, what's happening? And all my family comes out after I'm in the car through this much of a window, gets to say goodbye to me. So no hugs, no kisses. And I'm angry too. So I'm like spewing hate at them. Like, how could you fucking do this to me? What are you doing? I hate you. Like all this stuff. And they're just crying and is like, well, this is what's best for you. Like, we love you and just do what you have to do to come home. And I was like, okay. And I still have no idea where I'm going. I have no idea what's happening. And And we set off on this journey. I end up falling asleep again, and I wake up in Utah. So they drove me from San Diego to Laverkin, Utah, to a place called Cross Creek Manor. And I had written you, I don't know if you've seen Netflix, The Program.
Yes.
So that's where I went.
Okay, so I haven't seen the documentary, but I saw that it was a new one that came up on Netflix. I'm a huge documentary girl, so I'm going to have to watch. So you were at the place that Netflix has made the documentary about.
So what my place, the Cross Creek Manor, comes up in episode 3.
Okay.
So, and there's only 3 episodes. So the documentary is on a place called Ivy Ridge, which is a sister school of Cross Creek.
Okay.
And Cross Creek is basically, and this is in the documentary, it was the testing grounds. So it was opened in the 90s. So it was one of the oldest ones of the WASP programs. WASP is the larger organization that owned a lot of these programs all over the world. And slowly they started getting shut down in the foreign countries before America, which is crazy. Mexico shut down their facility before Utah did. Many years before Utah did. So the documentary is about a lady who went to Ivy Ridge, which opened up after Cross Creek. But since it's a sister school, it has the same program. So everything's the same. The demerits, the group sessions, the attack therapy. So I find myself at this place in Utah, and they check me in, and I had a tongue ring, I had a nose ring, I had a belly button ring, like I had all this jewelry, all this body jewelry. And they immediately strip search me. So they throw me into a room, and it's like this empty room, and there's bunk beds everywhere, like empty bunk beds and like a desk. And they take me into the bathroom again and strip search me. And I complied with all of that. And then it came time to take out all my jewelry. And I took out my belly button and I took out my nose ring, but I refused to take out my tongue ring. And because my sister had bought me that tongue ring that I was wearing. And of course I was like I was crazy, anxiety, didn't know what's going on. This was like the last piece of home that I could hold on to. And I was like, you're not taking this out of my mouth. Like, no way. And they told me that they would hold me down, they would restrain me and physically take it out of my mouth if I did not. And so I ran to one of the bunk beds on the bottom bunk, and I held up in a corner, and every time they tried to come near me, I just kicked at them. I kicked them, and I was like, get the fuck away from me. You're not getting in my mouth. Like, no way. And that's when I started to fight. And then it was like a whole good cop, bad cop situation. So then they had somebody else come in that I didn't know, and they're like, okay, like, I'm not going to try and force you, and we're just going to go over here, and we're just going to let you cool down. And I don't really know. They show this room in the documentary. I don't really know where it was in the floor plan, because you only went there if you went to this solitary room. And they show it in the 3rd episode, and it's this small little room with no doors. It's this peach color. And at the time, they had cameras in every angle. And there was somebody on the other side of the door who was just watching me. And it's a concrete room, and it's like a solitary confinement with a drain in the middle. And they made me just sit in there, and I couldn't lay down, and I couldn't like hug myself, because I tried to hug my knees and go to sleep. I couldn't do that. They wouldn't let me sleep. I had to just sit there and basically think about what I did. And there was somebody on the other side of the door watching me. And I remember trying to talk to her, and she wouldn't say anything to me, like wouldn't answer my questions, wouldn't say anything. Just, you're not supposed to talk. Stop talking. And I'm like, okay. And I don't really know how long I was in there. It was hours, though. It was hours. I got there at daytime and probably late afternoon. I don't know how long it takes to drive from San Diego to Utah, but probably late afternoon. They fed me a sack lunch for dinner, so I was in there for dinner. And then they finally pulled me out after everybody had went to bed. So everybody else was asleep. And Ron, the girls in the program will know his name, Ron, came into me, and it was, again, like the good cop, bad cop. So I was there for probably about 6 hours, just sitting in silence, not being able to sleep, not being able to talk to anybody. I didn't eat anything they gave me, and Ron came in and was like, okay, have you been here long enough? Are you ready to take out your tongue ring? And I started crying. I just immediately started crying because he put his arm around me. And I started crying, and I was like, I just want to go to bed. I just want to go to sleep. And he goes, oh, that's okay. He goes, we'll get you to a bed right now. He goes, just go ahead and give me that tongue ring. And I did. And I was like, fine, here. And I was crying, and I was like, just please make sure it gets home to my parents. Please make sure, like, it has sentimental value. It's from my sister. Like, just make sure that it gets home. And he's like, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And then he took me to my room, and then I fucking woke up in hell. Like, it was, everything in that documentary is true. It was based off of attack therapy. So basically they knock you down to build you back up. And the main thing that I got from that program was extreme accountability, which was just reinforcing what I was already feeling, the shame that I was already feeling. If you were raped, you have to take accountability for that. You have to take accountability for the clothes you were wearing, for the situation you put yourself in. And like we were saying, if you didn't say no, how's the guy supposed to know that you didn't want that? Because everything else about you was saying that you were inviting that. And based on results, you have exactly what you intended.
So they basically taught you
Mm-hmm.
that it was your fault.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And there was I remember for my personal program, there was a huge emphasis on my sexual history and basically how bad and dirty it was. And and it's like, even because I was extremely honest, I don't think I brought up the rape because I kept that deep inside, but I was honest about like the relationships I had with like 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, and my sexual escapades while I was in my addiction as a teenager. And this is all at 16, mm-hmm. at 16. So the fact that this was the focus of my therapy and not the fact that my mom was not there, not the fact that I had to raise myself, like we didn't talk about any of that.
Right. Not the fact that what happened to you led you down the road of addiction?
Yeah. None of that. What did you do to put yourself in that situation? Mm-hmm. You must have seduced those 30 and 40-year-olds.
Right.
And at the time, I was like, yeah, I did.
Right.
Absolutely. I put myself in that situation. And yeah, I was flirting with him. It was a game to me to see if I could make an older guy feel comfortable with me being underage. And so, yeah, I did. I internalized that shame for many, many, many years. And even the programs, like the seminars, there was this one, and I didn't remember what seminar this was. I remember doing it. And when I watched the documentary, I realized that it's when you choose out of a seminar. So you can, whether you complete a seminar or not, and it's not always up to you. They can tell you that you're not working your program or you're not being real enough, and then they kick you out of the seminar. And that's still called choosing out, because based on results, you have exactly what you intended. So you didn't want to work your program. You wanted to choose out. Like anything that happened to you, it was your fault. And so then after you choose out of a seminar, they put you in, I think it's a breakout seminar. I forget the word for it. It's in the documentary. But it's the hands, what is it? Hands up, hands down, hands together, hands apart. Hands up, hands down, hands together, hands apart. And you do that for 8 hours. 8 hours
straight?
8 hours straight. Just hands up, hands down, hands together, hands apart. And
what is that supposed to do?
It's ready?
No.
So, and they turn the lights down too. So you can't like see the people around you. And everybody in the room is chanting it. You have to say it out loud. And it's a surreal experience. And I could hear some people like getting angry with it and some people singing, and what they say is it's up to you. So this is a exercise in submission, in submitting to the process. And it's up to you how you choose to work your program. You can either give in and be happy about it and make the best of it, or you can fight it like some other people, but it's not going away. Like,
okay.
So it was literally an exercise in submitting to the process.
For 8 hours.
For 8 hours.
How many people were in this program with you, would you say?
Oh my God. A lot.
And was it
Hundreds.
all girls or was it girls and boys?
So it was girls and boys, but the girls and boys weren't allowed to mingle.
Okay.
And it was funny because the chow hall is on the boys' side. Mm-hmm. So every time we went to chow and there was guys around, you had to put your forehead on the wall. And so you're not allowed to look at the boys. We weren't allowed to even touch each other girls, for more than 3 seconds, or you got written up. We weren't allowed to look out the window for more than 3 seconds, or that was run plans. You were planning on running away. Everything was locked down. Our mail was being read. And the program people say that they didn't read our mail. They read our mail. And they read incoming mail. And I think it's so funny that people try and deny that they were reading our mail when we literally would get our mail opened for us. Like, we weren't allowed to open our own mail.
Were you surprised when you saw that the documentary came out?
Yes.
Like, because was it just so random and you were like, wait a second?
Well, so back in 2020 when Paris Hilton came out with her story, that's when I started that's really when I started my healing journey.
Right.
And
because that kind of shows you this could happen to anybody.
Mm-hmm. And that's when I started therapy too.
Okay.
Because it was bringing up all of this old program stuff. I got on all the Facebook groups for like the program survivors and started getting in contact with them. And it hadn't really blown up yet until just recently with this documentary. But and then I got into therapy and I started working out all that. So like I said, I've been on this journey for about 4 years now, but that was the spur of it, was remembering about the program when Paris Hilton came out with hers. And I was like, oh my God, I went to that place.
Was it hard for you to watch the documentary?
Yes.
Yeah.
Very hard.
Because I'm sure it brought up memories that I'm sure some of it you probably tried to block out or just didn't even remember certain details.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And then rewatching it, it's like, wow, it actually was. Because I think a lot of people tend to kind of make things seem a little bit better than they actually were. And then watching it back, you're like, this is not okay. Like, this is terrible.
Yeah. And it's not okay. And then a lot of people started, after the documentary too, a lot of people started joining the Facebook groups that were already around and sharing stories. And and then I'm also in a Facebook Messenger group with some of the girls that were in my group that I personally know. And that's been bringing back memories and super healing. Everybody's super supportive. And I love that. And, but like one of the things that brought back a memory from that chat group, from the Facebook Messenger group, was the showers. So when you got in trouble there, you had to go to what's called worksheets, and it's basically book on tape. And then they give you like a test to make sure that you're listening. But if you do worksheets enough, you just know the answers. Yeah. So you don't even have to listen. But you're not allowed to sleep. You're not allowed to talk. You just have to sit there for hours and listen to book on tape and take these stupid little tests. And that's when you're in trouble. And I got dropped. So humor is my coping mechanism. So I use sarcasm a lot. And I just remember going to a lot of people in my group, and when they would say just obvious things, being like, thank you, Captain Obvious. Ha ha ha. Just being a little bitch about it. And so they dropped me from level 3 to level 1 and had the whole group line up and tell me why I was being dropped and what they thought of me. And it's called feedback. And that's another thing that the programs do, is they use the girls against each other. Yeah. So you like literally feel so alone there. I was there for probably about 10 months. I spent my 17th birthday there. I spent all the holidays there.
Did you have any contact with your family?
So the crazy thing, I wouldn't have, because I wasn't on high enough levels. But they sent me, so they do all your doctor work there too, and then they charge the parents for it too. That's another thing, is this boarding school was not cheap. I think it was $4,000 for $4,500 a month, not including any medication. Or they used to give us lists too to buy new toothbrushes, toothpaste, like toiletries and stuff, and they would go to Walmart, buy us our stuff, and then send the bill to our parents. So nothing, like, it was a huge racket.
Yeah.
And in the documentary, they said that at one point they were making over $6 million a month off of all these programs. So there's definitely a financial benefit for them. For
sure.
Not just helping kids. And I don't think they ever thought, I don't know if they ever thought that they were helping kids, but attack therapy is not helping troubled teens.
No. And I think there's such a fine line, like, from the parents' perspective. I think parents hit this point where they're like, what else can I do? There's nothing else I can do.
Yeah.
And they send their kids to try to, like, I think in their minds, and even growing up when I was younger, in my mind, it was like, okay, if you're bad, you go to boarding school, and it's just very strict rules. And I kind of feel like that's what parents' mindset is like, okay, it's like almost like a Navy type of thing, where your child they don't have the freedoms that they have in your household. But then it's almost like these places take it to such a further, like, all these different steps of, well, then you're getting blamed, and there is no such thing as being a victim, and then you're getting abused, and then it's like,
so crazy that you say that, because being a victim was a derogatory term. Yeah. So, like, if you were being a victim in group, they would go like this: victim, stop playing the victim.
Right.
Yeah. So it was definitely, there's no such thing as being the victim. A victim was bad. Yeah. It was shameful to be a victim. Yeah. And I don't mind. And my parents said that too. Like, we didn't know what to do. And this was in 2001, 2002. And the internet was barely a thing, let alone my parents know how to work the internet. And that's what it was being touted as, is we're here to save your child from themselves. Do you want them to end up in jail or dead? And that's all my parents could think about was, I don't want my kid to die. Right. So I don't blame them for sending me there. I blame the institution of, like, the troubled teen industries. Because that's one thing if I was sent to a boarding school that actually had, like, education. There was no education.
That's right. That's what I was going to say. It's almost like if you're going somewhere for education and to kind of have these rules in place and live a life of order, I can understand how that would shift a child's mindset and their lifestyle in a way. It teaches them a different way to live.
Yes.
But I do not understand the process, which I don't think we're supposed to understand it, because I don't think I think it's something that honestly was created as a manipulation tactic. And, like, people they're just getting money from it because they know that they can. Because in what world does abuse and isolation and everything in between help a child get out of a dark place? If anything, that's giving them more trauma and digging them into a deeper hole.
And that's exactly what it did.
Right.
For 90% of the people that went there. And there are some outliers that I've heard from in the later years that was like, oh, it helped me, which is great. Like, no, everybody has their own journey, but I would venture to say that a majority, it didn't help. It made them worse, especially from the years that I went there. And I wouldn't mind, like, saying that if I went to a boarding school, but when you start bringing in unqualified people for therapy and using an attack therapy that has no, like, you send people going to boot camp, going off to fight wars into attack therapy, not vulnerable kids.
Right. And now, is the attack therapy, is that when you guys were in that group, or is that something different?
No, so we had group. I forget how often we had group, but we had, like, group therapy sessions, and then we would have one-on-one sessions.
Okay.
And then we would have seminars every 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
And depending on where you were at in your program was what seminar you got put up for. And you had to complete all of them to move up in your levels.
Okay. So all of these different, I'm so sorry. So all of these different things, that was all part of the attack therapy, like, as a whole. Okay.
Yes. The victim blaming, victim shaming.
Got it.
All that. And like I said, for years, the number one thing that I learned from there was to take accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And you have accountability in whatever you do. And one of the main stories that I took with me forever was if you're out on the road and you get rear-ended by a car, the insurance is going to say that it's not your fault. It's the other person's fault because they didn't stop. And but you shouldn't believe that, because you had a choice to be out on that road. You knew the implications that you could get into an accident, and you still chose to drive. So you have to take accountability for putting yourself on the road and getting into that accident. And they applied that theory to everything, including rape. Yeah, you have to take accountability. And that's what I took with me for years. So I got,
if you already didn't have enough of that prior.
Yeah, let's just keep drilling that shame into
right.
your little mind as a 16-year-old.
So you were there for 10 months.
So I was there for 10 months, and I had my 17th birthday there. And when a kid's about to turn 18 in the program, they can legally leave. And so the program goes to the parents and says, here, let's come up with an exit plan for your kid. And the exit plan usually consists of $50 and a train ticket to Provo. And that's your exit plan. And then you have to figure it out from there at just turning 18, if you choose to leave. But if you choose to stay and finish the program, we will welcome you back home. And that's what the program tells the parents to do. And yeah. And my mom, thank God, was like, I'm not sending her. Like, I sent her here to save her life, not to give her a bus ticket to fucking Provo. Mm-hmm. And so my mom, they started talking to her. It was a couple months before my birthday, and they started talking to her about my exit plan. And she was like, no, that's not going to be her exit plan. And so she ended up pulling me shortly before my 18th birthday. And again, they do everything in secret. And actually, hold on, let me back up. So while I was in the program, normally I wouldn't have seen my parents. You don't get to talk to them for like the first couple months. And then you get to talk to them on the phone, on speakerphone in front of your family rep. So nothing is ever private. And they can choose to hang up the phone call. They can choose to pick up the phone call if something's happening. So they can disrupt whatever you're saying. So it's not like I freely talked to my parents. But while I was in there, it was discovered that I had cervical precancer cells. And so my mom, and they were going to charge my mom to get them removed, to see their gynecologist there. And my mom's very weird about doctors and stuff. And she was like, absolutely not. She's going to see our doctor. And I had no idea any of this was going on. I didn't know my test results. I didn't know anything. And then one night I get woken up before everybody else. It was still dark out, and it was my family rep, Sherry. And she was like, okay, sweetie, come with me. And I was like, okay. And it's all very secretive. And I think they think so you can't run, so you can't plan to run. But it's very scary to a kid. And she took me to the office and put me in the car, and I was like, okay, where are we going? And she's like, don't worry about it. You're okay. And still not telling me anything of where we're going. And we get to the airport, and then finally she tells me that I'm going home, but I'm going home for a doctor's appointment. And that's when we get to the airport. And so we're walking up, and she's telling me this, and then I see my mom in the airport, and I was like, oh my God. And so I freak out, I'm crying. It's the first time I had seen her in probably at least 4 to 6 months. And she tells me the same thing, that I'm going to a doctor's appointment. And so I go out there, and it was like, I don't know, like maybe a 3-day turnaround. So I flew out there. I had a procedure the next day, and then and I got all day with my mom on that day, and she took me to her boyfriend's house, the one who lived in LA too. So that was fun. And then, and then I flew out the next day. Okay. So it was like a really quick turnaround. She was super nervous. She wouldn't even let me like out of her sight for 1 second. I had to go to the bathroom in the airport, and she made me hold her hand under the stall because the program told her to keep me within eyesight, so I couldn't run. So even going home for all of this, my mom was like took it very seriously, and then shipped me back to Utah. And I had, I forget what it's called. I had a procedure to remove some of my cervix and got sent back to Utah and to finish out my program. And so that was the only time that, and I got to see my dad. He picked us up from the airport. So I got to see some family members on that trip, but that was the only time that I got to see them the whole time I was there. Didn't get to visit with them or much of anything. And then I got back to the program and continued doing my time. And then my mom pulled me when shortly before my 18th birthday. And it's the same thing. She came in the middle of the night, told me to pack up all my things. And I was like, okay, like this is different than the last time. I didn't have to pack up my things last time. What's happening? And she tells me that I'm going home, that I'm getting pulled from the program. And I was like, oh, okay. So, and she takes me to the airport, and I'm with another girl who had just graduated the program. So with an upper level, and I'm still at level 3. There's 6 levels. They tell you that it usually takes a year to get through 6 levels. Normal time frame is way longer than that, at least a year and a half, if not more. There's girls who were there for years and years who never finished. But yeah, so she was an upper level, and she had just graduated, and Sherry took us both to the airport. And I was so scared. I was still in my Cross Creek Manor uniform, and it was just us on the plane. So my mom didn't meet me at the airport, and it was just us. And I was like, oh my God, like what's happening? And we were flying. Yeah. Like, where are we going? Cause we were flying into San Francisco. And I was like, I don't know what's happening. I don't have any of my plane tickets. Sherry took care of all that for me, you know? And I was like, I don't know why we're flying into San Francisco, but whatever. And I'm just chopping it up with this upper level. She let me use her makeup. I hadn't had makeup in 10 months. So I was like, oh my God, mascara. Yeah. And we land in San Francisco, and my mom's there. My mom's there with my older sister, my oldest sister. And if I'm 17 at this time, she's like, what, close to 30. And she lived in Walnut Creek in San Francisco area. And so I see them both there. And my mom tells me that she pulled me from the program, but that I was still not allowed to come home. She didn't trust me to come home yet, and that she was sending me to live with my sister in Walnut Creek, and that I was going to finish out school there. And so at this point, I had dropped out my junior year, and I had kind of done like the home studies at Cross Creek, which is not school at all, but I did the home studies there and kind of caught up on my junior year, and then was enrolling in my senior year at 18. So I did 5 years of high school, and enrolled at the school that my sister was teaching at. So my sister was a high school teacher. And so she got me in that school, and I lived with her for probably about less than a year. Immediately found drugs again, immediately got back out on meth within 6 months. And I don't know if my sister knew or not. But I slowly stopped going to school and started using again and staying at my friend's house and staying out. And that was causing a problem in her relationship. I think they found like my weed pipe once and caused a big, huge fight. Because of course, me being an addict, I can't touch anything else. But little did they know I was already back on meth, you know. And again went right back to my old ways, and found an older boyfriend. And I was at 18 at this time, so wasn't a big deal. But I think he was like 23, and I ended up getting pregnant in March of 2004. I got pregnant, and I was 18, and I was still going to high school. And I was like, everybody around me was telling me to have an abortion. That was the best thing for me.
Did you tell your mom right away, or your sister?
I told my dad.
Okay.
My dad's been like my constant confidant.
Yeah.
He's
He's your safety person.
He's my safety. I love my dad. And he told me that no matter what I decided to do, he would support me. And no matter what. He's like, I understand that everybody's telling you to have an abortion. While that may be the smartest thing for you to do right now, he's like, I'm not going to tell you to do that. And if you choose to have this baby, come home and I'll support you. And I was like, okay. So, and then my closest sister in age to me was away at Humboldt State University. And so I found out I was pregnant and I was like, I'm going to go live with my sister in college. And so I had my boyfriend, my daughter's father, drive me up there. It was like, I think 6 hours away from where we were at. And she was like, yeah, come on down. You can sleep on my couch. Like, typical teenage college stuff. Right. And so I was there, and within 2 days, she got a 3-day pay or quit on her apartment. So she was getting kicked out of her apartment. So she was like, never mind, I'm going home. Let's go home. Yeah. I was like, okay. So I was there for 2 days and then helped her pack up her whole apartment and had my boyfriend help her. We loaded up his car, her truck, and then another one of our friends' cars. And we're like, we're going home to San Diego. Like, we're coming home, Dad. Get ready. Like, all of us.
So you guys were moving back home to live with your dad, not your mom.
Right.
Okay.
My dad. Yes. Not my mom.
Okay.
Still not very close to my mom
Got
at this point.
And she was with her boyfriend, I'm assuming.
And she was with her boyfriend at the time. Yeah. And, and I don't really remember too many moments with her. She... all of her kids were out of the house. I was the last one.
Right.
And now I was gone, and she was living her best life. She got a motorcycle. I think she got another boyfriend at that point. I don't know. She was living her best life.
Got it.
Without kids. And me and my sister Natalie drove all the way down to San Diego and just came home and was just like, we're here. Welcome. Like, you're welcome, Dad. We're home. And all of this within like a week time span. Like, I'm pregnant. I'm moving in with Natalie. Just kidding. Me, Natalie, and my boyfriend are all moving back down to you, Dad. So we moved back to my dad's house. And at this point, they were still worried about me. And we were in his house and he wouldn't let me sleep with my boyfriend, even though I was already pregnant. We weren't allowed to sleep in the same bed. So he stayed in his truck the first night. And then he had some friends down by the coast that he was going to go stay with for a couple days. And I was like, okay, I don't want you sleeping in your truck, but yeah, go stay with your friends. And then I didn't hear from him for like 3 days. And then he called me out of the blue and told me that he woke up in the desert somewhere and he didn't know where he was at. And, but that he was okay and that he was gonna like come back. And I was like, okay. And then he called me the next day and told me that he was still in the desert and that he was on his way to Las Vegas to go start his own army. And he was going to come back for me and the baby. And I was like, what? What was that? And that was the last time I heard from him. And his sister called me probably about a month later and said that he had a mental breakdown and that they had him in an institution and not to tell anybody. And I didn't. And then I never heard from them again, ever. So I was
like, even to this day?
Even to this day. Even to this day. Yeah.
Did you ever try or no?
No.
Okay.
So, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Later. But
wow.
Yeah. So I never heard from him again. And I think, he was telling me to get an abortion too. And then after that, when I said I wouldn't, then he accused me of cheating on him. Okay. It wasn't even his,
right.
And
so he wasn't
all
like very supportive anyway.
He wasn't very supportive. No, his mom was though.
Okay. And did your mom know yet or not yet?
I think she knew. Okay. Probably. And did news she have around my family travels fast.
Yeah. Did she have an opinion right away? Like if she like about keeping it or not?
No, she probably told me to get an abortion.
Okay.
For sure. Yeah. Because she was not about to support that. But yeah. And where was I? No, I lost my train of thought.
You never heard from
Oh yeah, I never heard from him again.
Okay.
And he wasn't very supportive, but his mom was. That's what it was. His mom was. And I remember before we left to Humboldt to go move in with my college age sister, he had took me over to his mom's house, and he's Mexican. His mom didn't speak any English, so he had to translate, and she was very nice, very kind. And as is with that culture, she was like, you can live with me. I'll take care of the baby. You can go back to school. Like, I'll do everything, and you can just live with me. I just want to be with my grandbaby. And I didn't know her very well.
Right.
So I was like, no, I think I'm going to stick with my family, you know?
Yeah.
Looking back on it now, hindsight's 2020. I probably should have taken her up on that.
Right.
Because my mom was way worse. But yeah, so his family was supportive. He wasn't. And so then about 3 months pregnant, I never talked to him again. And that's when I met my first husband. We'll call him Jerry.
Okay.
And actually I had met him before. So I had come home on Christmas, right before I got pregnant. And I had met him.
Okay.
And he was using at the time, as was my sister. Occasionally she dabbled. And she took me over to his house. And like right away, he was infatuated with me. And I was like, nah, I don't even live down here. I'm just visiting. I'm only here for the weekend, like whatever. And then I went back home. And then when I came back after I got pregnant, so probably March, April the next year, he heard I was back in town and hit me up.
Okay.
He was like, what's up? I hear you're back. And I was like, I am, but I'm pregnant.
I'm back with plus one.
Plus one, exactly. And he's like, I don't care. He's
Wow.
like, I don't care. I want to be with you, and I'll take care of this baby. And he was with me through the whole pregnancy from 3 months to the time she was born. And it was good in the beginning, as all relationships usually are. But he was still using, so we were fighting all the time. And very heated arguments, and no physical abuse, but definitely like, you know, the drug addict manipulation and lying.
And at this time you were clean.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. When I got pregnant, despite what my mother says, I stopped using.
Okay.
I might have smoked a cigarette here or there.
Okay.
With my second one, I smoked a few cigarettes and smoked like maybe a couple bowls, maybe a handful through the whole pregnancy. But I stopped meth right away as soon as I got pregnant. And with the first one, no cigarettes or weed or anything. And so I was clean, but he was using, and I was like, oh, it's okay. You know, like this is my life since I was 15 years old. So I wasn't going to judge him for that. So stupid. I was so in love.
Right.
Well, and he loved me. And no matter how bad it got, because my family ended up hating him, they always said, I know he loves you, and I know you love him. You guys just aren't good together. And which was so true. But he was there through my whole first pregnancy. He even tried to lie to his parents and say that it was his. And his mom is like, the dates aren't adding up, sweetie. Like, I think she's lying to you. And he's like, no, she's not. So, and he signed the birth certificate and everything. He's paid child support for her her whole life. Like, that's her dad. And fought in court for her, like the whole nine. And that's the only dad she's ever known as well. So the bio dad is just the sperm donor.
Got it.
But yeah, so me and Jerry were pretty hot and heavy through my whole pregnancy. He signed the birth certificate. His parents came around, his mom came around, and that was their grandbaby. And but she was born with colic, so which means she cried all the time from the time she was born till probably about like 4 months. We would put her in her car seat and swing her like this, and that's the only time, like, my arms were so strong. That's the only time that she would sleep if she wasn't on my chest. So I had to be holding her. I had to be rocking her. She had to be in the car, even though the car worked sometimes. So it was hard. And especially as I think I was just barely 19. Like my birthday's in September and her birthday's in November. So I was barely 19 and freshly clean.
Yeah.
9 months clean.
And you were young.
I was very young. And this was his first kid too, and he was still using. So we didn't know what to do. I would take her to the doctor all the time and be like, she won't stop crying. I don't know what to do. And I'm not getting sleep. And I would sleep in my computer chair and just Google all the things about colic and everything I could find, like gas drops and, pat this way or hold her that way. And I wasn't getting any sleep, and she wouldn't sleep in her crib. And and I remember calling my mom one time at like 3:00 in the morning, just crying and being like, I don't know what to do. Like, she won't stop crying. Like, I'm going crazy. And it was probably like a 5-minute conversation. She wasn't on the phone with me that long. And, oh, that's okay. That's what kids do. Just love her and hug her and you'll be okay. And I was like, okay, that did nothing for my mental health.
Right.
Like, I'm going crazy. And the doctor too, that's what he would say. Statistics show that, a certain percentage of babies just have colic and they'll grow out of it. And it's like, I don't think you guys understand that she is crying.
Yeah, like what
24/7.
Right.
Yeah, if I'm not holding her, and I can't do anything without her. I couldn't leave her with anybody to watch her because she would cry the whole time. And I left her one time with my stepmom, and she cried the entire time. And my stepmom's a saint. I love her. And she's like, that's okay. She can cry, like, she's so good. And she was so supportive of me. And I love my stepmom. But she was the only one who watched her just one time, like in her first year of life.
Yeah.
And but shortly after she was born, I was going crazy. And Jerry was still using. And he was like, here, just do some meth, and then you can stay up with her and you won't lose your mind. It'll be fine. And so I started using meth again when she was probably about 2 months. And then I got pregnant again. Which is really, really sad. My family had an over-under bet on how long it would take me to get pregnant again. And I beat everybody. So I got pregnant within 8 weeks of having her. And I waited the full 6 weeks to have sex after giving birth. Mm-hmm. And so within 2 weeks of having sex again, I got pregnant again.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and she was about 2 months, 2.5 months. And and then I found myself pregnant again. And I was back on meth at that point because I wasn't sleeping. And I quit meth again. And I think I was staying... I can't remember if I was staying at my mom's house or my dad's house. But Jerry got kicked out. He was not allowed at either of my parents' houses. And they didn't like him. And of course, it was all his fault that I relapsed. It was his fault that I was in this position. We were fighting all the time. It was his fault that my daughter had colic because of how much we fought during the pregnancy, and that energy transfers to the baby. So it was all his fault.
Right.
And so he wasn't allowed at the houses anymore. And so I think I was staying with my mom at the time, very briefly, while he went and got us a place to live. And he found us a place to live and renting a room with one of his friends. And he came to pick me up at my mom's house, me, my pregnant self, and our daughter. And my mom freaked out. She freaked out. She said I was not going to leave with the baby. I wasn't going anywhere safe. I couldn't take care of the baby. He's a drug addict, everything. And so she took my daughter, and I think she was probably about 6 months at this time, maybe 8 months, and took her from me and locked herself in her bedroom so I couldn't leave with my daughter. And I was like, I was freaking out, like, give me my kid back. Like, and at this point me and Jerry were married. We had eloped. So we were legally married at this point. And I was like, I'm leaving with my family and my husband to go move into our place. Like, give me my kid back. And she wouldn't. And she called my dad, hysterical, trying to get him to come down and stop us from leaving. She called Jerry's mom, like fanatically trying to get her to come down to stop us from leaving. And finally, we had to call the cops. And we had to get the cops involved because she would not come out of her room with my baby. And the cops made her open the door and told her, your daughter is a grown adult. She's married with a husband. This is her baby. And what you're doing is kidnapping. You're kidnapping her baby right now. You need to give her kid back and let her go. And she tried to tell the cop all the bad things that we did and everything that's happening. And he's a man of the law. Like, your daughter doesn't look high to me,
right.
Which I wasn't. And if she chooses to leave, like, it's her choice who she chooses to marry. And if she chooses to leave with her husband, that's her choice and that's her daughter. Like, you need to let it go. Mm-hmm. And so she finally did. And we moved out. And in retrospect, it was not the best.
Yeah.
I probably should not have been with him or moving out. But, I was 19 and it was my life. And I wasn't using. I was the best mom that I could be, albeit very young and not knowledgeable. But I didn't think that she was in any danger. I mean, at that point, the biggest thing my mom had on me was I used to prop the bottle. And, oh my God, it's going to rot her teeth if you prop the bottle. And so it's like, okay.
Right.
I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything on how to be a mom. And I was just a baby. And another thing that she brought up was we used to smoke cigarettes around her. And we did. And I'll admit that. And that was not healthy at all. But I used to put 2 blankets over her car seat. And we would smoke in the car when we were driving. And to me, and my mom used to talk shit about me all the time for doing that. And but to me, I'm an 80s baby. And there's family footage, family video of all the adults sitting in the kitchen, like 7 adults smoking cigarettes and kids running back and forth. And my mom smoked in the car with us growing up, like me and my fiance have a joke. Because we're the same age. It's like you just prayed you didn't get an ash in the eye because it burned. Like that's the era that we grew up in. Mm-hmm. So me covering her so she doesn't get a freaking ash in her eye was like, oh, I'm doing better than you did. Exactly. Right. Like, and again, I would never do that now. Mm-hmm. Ever. But I thought I was doing something better than what was done for me. And but she constantly likes to throw that in my face. Which is okay. I'm okay with that. But yeah, so we left and I lived with him and I was working. He wasn't. He was still using. So I brought in all the money and did all the cooking and taking care of the baby, and all he had to do was watch her during the day, and which he did. And then we got kicked out of that place, and he found us another apartment, which was a flop house, which was, I say, is like the worst time in my life. Because this apartment that we moved into, we live in North County, San Diego, and downtown San Diego is where all the gangs, well, I guess there were gangs everywhere. But it was a flop house where they would bring the drugs from downtown into North County and then disperse them amongst their runners in North County. And our apartment was where they divvied up all the drugs. Got it. And where all the runners came and met and picked up their stash and whatever. So it was a huge drug running ring. And the owner of the apartment was in jail. So he let us stay there. As long as we kept up the business, we could stay there for free. And again, I was pregnant at this time. I had a 9-month-old, almost 1-year-old. And I think she turned 1 there. But and it was awful. So I would get locked in our room. So the door wasn't on the hinges. It had no doorknob. It was an awful place. And at night, when all the heathenry was going on at night, he Jerry would lock me in the room, and he'd put the door in place, and he'd put a sock in the door, and he'd tuck us into bed.
Funny.
Right. And he'd tuck us into bed, and he would go about his business, doing the apartment's business at night. And then I would wake up in the morning with my daughter, and I'd move the door aside, and I'd kick everybody out, and I'd clean up, and, shit everywhere. It was, as you can imagine, a drug house could be. And I would wake up, and I'd kick everybody out of the house. Like, you guys got to go. This is my kid's apartment now. And I'd sweep everything up. And then it was mine and my daughter's apartment for the day.
Yeah.
And then that would happen every night. So, and it was awful. And he was using, there was constantly people in my house that I didn't know. There was constantly drugs, gang members. He didn't have a job. So that was us living in that apartment for free was his payment for doing all of that. I didn't have a job anymore. I was on WIC. I don't know if you know what WIC is.
No.
WIC is like a food subsidy program.
Okay.
So I was on welfare as well. So I would get like food stamps and cash aid and stuff, but not a lot of money.
Right.
And then WIC would give you just certain foods, like if you think of government cheese, so it's the government cheese, and they give you fruits and veggies and grains. And for my daughter, formula. And they would give me 9 cans of formula a month.
Okay.
And there was a bodega in town that would buy those formula cans for $5 a can. So Jerry would take my WIC every month and sell it for $45.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to learn how to steal formula. And that was one of the hustles he did anyway, was stealing formula and selling it. Now it's all locked up. You can't even get to it anymore. But back in the day, it was a huge racket. And so we would do that anyway. And so his rationale was, you can just steal some more. And I was fully pregnant at this time, had a stroller. I was stealing everything. I was stealing diapers. I was stealing wipes. I was stealing formula. I was stealing food to feed us as well. So that's really when I got into stealing. And every once in a while, like, some of the gang members were nice and, would help me clean up, or they'd take me grocery shopping, or they asked me if I needed anything for the baby. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while they would do that for me. But for the most part, I was walking. I had no car. So I would walk to Walmart and just steal everything I needed for the day. Right. And then go home and get locked in the room at night. But I ended up going into labor at that apartment. And while I was in the hospital, the owner of the apartment's girlfriend came to me and said, and she was also using, and she had visitation with her kids. And she told me she had nowhere to take her kids, that she had visitation that night, and she had nowhere to take her kids. And she was wondering if she could stay in the apartment while I was in the hospital. And I said, absolutely. And so I gave her the keys, and she ended up locking us out. She told us that we couldn't come back. She took all of our stuff. I was still in the hospital, so I had no idea what was going on. Jerry went over there to try and get the stuff, and we didn't have a lease. We didn't have anything other than our stuff is in there. And he wasn't about to call the cops either on a flop house that he's been involved in. So that wasn't an option. He wasn't going to call the cops to let us back in. And so I'm giving birth to my second child, and my mom has my older daughter while I was in the hospital. And I asked to stay another night because I had nowhere to go. Yeah. So, and this whole time too, Jerry's like raiding the hospital fridge. We're stocking up on sandwiches and juice and like, yeah, because we didn't know what we were going to do. And so finally it came down that my mom would let me move in with her. And I was like, okay, like I have nowhere to take my brand new baby. I'll take you up on that. And she already had my older one. So I moved in with her. And of course, Jerry was not allowed around. Like, I have this newborn with this man, and he's not allowed in the house. Mm-hmm. Like, and so, and I think that too, like the restriction of no, you can't see him, or no, he's not allowed here, was just made it stronger that I wanted to be with him.
Right.
You know, like he needs me. We need each other. We love each other.
Yeah.
He needs my support now more than ever, you know, like stuff like that.
Right.
And so I was staying with my mom, and I think at that, I don't think I stayed with her very long. I never stayed with my mom very long. Because by the time my second daughter was a month old, I had decided to go back on the street with Jerry, and we were going to do it together. That was the only way we could do it. 'Cause I brought in the money, really. But yeah, like we were going to go off together and get our own place because he wasn't allowed anywhere that I was. And then we were going to come back for our kids once we had a secure spot. But I was not about to leave with my kids knowing that I was going to go couch hop. Right. And to me, that was, you know, the best thing for them was to leave them with my mom. And at this point, I should back up. Jerry had been caught. So I brought him to my dad's house to be with us as a family. And Jerry had been caught there. And got into, my brother saw him there and just sucker punched him. Just went up and started a fight, sucker punched him, tackled him into my room, broke my glass closet door. Like it was a big deal. And so after that, I was like, you're right. Like you can't come here and we can only do this together. And so I had made up my mind to sign over power of attorney of my kids to my mom and leave with Jerry and go get a new apartment, go get a new place so I could come back for my kids. And the only reason I wrote her a power of attorney was because my daughter's 1 year checkup was coming. And she was like, I can't take her to the doctor. Because I was like, okay, she has a doctor's appointment. Like, here's her doctor's appointment. It's her 1 year checkup. And she's like, well, I can't take her to the doctor. And I was like, okay, cool. I'll write you a power of attorney. And, you know, it shouldn't be more than 6 months. Then I'll come back for them. And my youngest daughter was a month old. And my oldest daughter was a year. So they were very young. And I had seen this too, being about in that life. Like you see other women who don't have custody of their kids, who stay with their parents, or I saw one girl who was still using, like that one girl who locked us out of the apartment. She still had visitation with her kids, and she was very much in her addiction and very much into the gang life. And she still had visitation. So when I gave them to my mom, I wasn't thinking that it was going to be forever, one, and I didn't think it was going to be hard for me to come back and get them, especially because it was my mom, you know? And, but shortly after I left with Jerry, I got back on drugs, obviously. And that was 2005, 2006. And I have it here because I always forget the years. But so then I left her in December of 2005. And by August of 2006, I had been arrested. And at this point, we didn't have a place to go. I left my kids and my home to go be homeless with my husband. We were couch hopping. We were definitely in our addiction. I remember nights where there was like this mechanic shop with a bunch of broken down cars in its yard. And we would go into one of the broken down cars just to sleep, just so we could get off of the street. And then hoe bath in it in McDonald's bathroom. Remember that. But what we did to survive was we stole. And we had this little come up. And back in the day, it was GameStop and Blockbuster, back when Blockbuster had locations everywhere. Yeah. There's a Blockbuster on every corner. We would go into Blockbuster and we'd steal all of the Palm PS5 games, all of the Nintendo games, all of the new games, and the box sets for like series. Box sets were like a huge thing, and they were worth a lot of money. And so we would steal these things, take them to GameStop, and get cash for them. And then we got good at that and started making money at that and started living out of hotels. And then I found out by making connections that I could go to like TJ Maxx and Marshall's and Nordstrom's Rack and steal like name brand things and charge people half off sticker. And they would pay it gladly for these name brand purses. 7 for All Mankind jeans were like the thing. I would get like $50 a pop for them. Those were like a big moneymaker. And then also toiletries. So razors, skincare, creams. The ladies would pay half off sticker. Kids' clothes was another one. So I started my boosting, that's what they call it, a boosting career. People would just give me lists. It got to a point where people would just give me lists of everything they wanted. I'd go down on their list and they would pay me half off whatever sticker was. And that's how we made our money. And we made a lot of money. I made a lot of money. And Jerry was my lookout.
You guys had a whole business operation
Yes,
going.
we did. Yes, we did. And but the first time I got arrested in 2006, it was for a Blockbuster heist. And what we used to do is and I can say this because Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore, so nobody can copy it. I would have a roll-up bag that was on wheels, and it would roll up like super thin, and I'd put it in my purse. And then I'd get everything together that I wanted to steal in one section of the store, and I'd roll out my bag and I'd fill it up. And then, because they only had the sensors on the outgoing, and then they had no way for you to open the indoor coming in with no sensors on it because it didn't have a handle. So and Jerry would stand outside and he'd watch me through the window. And as soon as I would walk up, I'd have my bag like rolling behind me full of shit. And he would see me walk up and he'd open the incoming door for me, and I'd just walk right out and no alarms or anything. And so that's how we did it for a long time. And then I found out how to open the big cases with tweezers. And so then I would do that and then walk out with them just in my purse because they didn't have sensors on them anymore. So we were doing that at one Blockbuster, and in the same parking lot, it was like a shopping mall. So there was a Blockbuster, a Vons, like a sandwich shop, and like a Dairy Queen across the parking lot. And so we walk out, and we're walking up to our car, and we see a police officer roll in the parking lot, and we're like, oh shit. So we're like, well, we'll just keep walking. We won't go to the car, and which was a stolen car, by the way, which wasn't reported stolen. So he like punked someone for it. Yeah. So like we had met up with some guy and we asked him to borrow his van, and we just never returned it. And he was scared of Jerry and just never reported it. So, but anyway, side note. So we keep walking and we walk into Dairy Queen, and I go to the bathroom and I'm going to dump the stuff. Cause if they don't catch you with the stuff on you, then it's not really theft, right? In my mind. And so I go to the bathroom and I dump the stuff under the trash bag. So you can't just see it when you look in the trash. I took the trash bag out and dumped it in there and covered it back up. And I came back out of the bathroom and Jerry was gone. And I didn't know where he was. And I started freaking out. And I can see the cops now. Now there's 2 cop cars. They are at Blockbuster. So I know that they are looking for us. They start looking at our van that we had. So I was like, oh shit. And I can't find Jerry anywhere. And so I went up to Vons, and I'm still in the parking lot. I'm still circling the parking lot. I go to a payphone. Again, I don't know why I didn't have a cell phone. Because at this point, I think cell phones were a thing. And I go to a payphone and I tried calling his brother, and I'm watching the cops break into our car, and we had other obviously stolen items there. They had blankets out in front of the car It was a van, so on the side of the car. And they're just unloading all of our shit out of our van, all of the stolen shit. And they're taking pictures of it. And I'm like, oh, fuck. But I couldn't see Jerry. Like, I thought that they got him. And so I didn't know what to do. So I'm on the payphone calling his brother, and he's like, no, I haven't heard from him. And I was like, oh shit, like they got him. So then I start like circling around, being stupid, trying to see if they got him and kind of check out what they're doing with our stuff. And then I get spotted, and they put me in handcuffs, and they put me in the back of the cop car, and they're still, you know, taking out all of our stuff and taking pictures of it. And the cop starts, and I'm in the back of the cop car with my handcuffs behind my back, and he's rubbing my shoulder, telling me that it was going to be okay, that he wasn't going to charge me with anything tonight. And then he kept calling me princess. Oh, don't worry, princess. Don't worry, princess. And I was like, okay. And again, I'm just going with it. This is my conditioning, is you give men what they want and then you get out of trouble. And he was telling me that he wasn't going to charge me with anything, that he was going to let me go. So I was like, okay. And then he goes to buckle me in and cops a field, and I let him, whatever. Don't say anything. And then he brings me to the station, and I'm like, dude, I thought you said you weren't going to arrest me. You know, like what's happening? Right. And calling me princess the whole time, telling me, don't worry about it. It's just, you know, it's just what they have to do. And it's called a book and release. And he was going to book and release me. And so he booked me for under the influence, didn't charge me with anything, and did let me go. And so then I met back up with Jerry, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, you weren't there. Where did you go? And he admitted that he freaked out and ran. He just booked it down the street, and his conditioning taught him to just get as far away from the situation as possible. And he left me there. And so I was like, okay. And then, and that was my first arrest. But I did get released. But then the district attorney decided to pick up charges. I didn't know that they could do that. I thought I was just scot-free. I should have known better when they were taking pictures of everything and towing our car. But yeah. But they pressed charges later, which there was a warrant out for my arrest. I didn't turn myself in or anything. We kept doing what we were doing, except from San Diego County, we moved to Orange County. So we just drove a little bit further and did the same thing. And we ended up, what year? 2007. The very next year, got arrested for the same thing at Blockbuster in Orange County. And Jerry didn't leave me this time. We both got arrested. Both got arrested at the same time. And of course, they separated us. And in booking, and at this point, so I was doing the same thing. I had my bag ready. I was getting ready to walk out. I didn't see, excuse me.
You're fine.
I didn't see Jerry next to the door. So I was like, oh shit, like something's wrong. Cause usually he's on it. When I'm walking, he's already opening the door for me. And I didn't see him next to the door. So I circled back, and I got a bad feeling. So I just dropped my bag. I shoved it under a shelf, and I walked out, and there's cops out there already. And they arrest me right away. And I was like, oh, fuck. And I was like, I didn't steal anything. I was like, check me. I didn't steal anything. I didn't steal anything. And so I'm thinking they can't book me because I didn't walk out of the store with anything. And I get there, and Orange County is way different than San Diego. They are way colder, meaner, very mean. And so he got me down to the station, and I'm getting fingerprinted and everything. And he's talking to me, and he's like, you're being booked for a commercial burglary. And I was like, I didn't steal anything. And I said, you can't book me for that. And he goes, yeah, we found your bag in the store. We know you were thinking about it. And I said, yeah, I was thinking about it, but I didn't. And he goes, okay, we're going to book you for conspiracy to commit burglary. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, because you thought about it. That's conspiracy. And I was like, okay. So in that one sentence, I booked myself. I charged myself. And I ended up getting 6 months, as did Jerry. We were in the same system. And I don't know how, but we were able to write each other while we were both locked up together. And then Jerry got out and we finished our term. We both got the same amount, but I had a San Diego hold. So I wasn't able to get released. When my sentence was done in Orange County, they transferred me straight to San Diego County to get booked on that commercial burglary charge. Yes. And so, let's see, I was arrested in, looks like November. And I didn't get, actually, no, that's not right. That's my conviction date. That's not right. So before November, I got arrested, but I was convicted in November. But so I was already in jail for, I think, like 3 months at this point. Mm-hmm. And then they transferred me down to San Diego. I spent Thanksgiving, Christmas. Nobody came to visit me. My parents knew. My dad found out because he had a Orange County sheriff as a friend. And they hadn't heard from me in a while. And it was normal to not hear from me for months, a couple months at a time. But I would always come back around and visit the girls. I would visit the girls on their birthday. I would pop in, something my mom hated, that I would, when I had the chance or I was feeling sober enough, like I didn't want to be around them all twacked out in my addiction. Yeah. So I would come around sporadically. I would say probably about every couple months to visit them. And I hadn't been around. So my dad reached out to his sheriff friend and she checked all the databases and she's like, yeah, she's in Orange County jail. Like she's safe, Yeah. But yeah, that's why you haven't heard from her. And by the time I got transferred to San Diego, they knew where I was. I was in contact with them. No money on my books, no visits. I didn't see my kids. My mom refused to bring my kids to visit me. And the only pictures she sent of my girls was one nice picture and then like 5 or 6 pictures of my daughter on a nebulizer. Apparently my mom had her diagnosed with asthma within like the first couple months she got her. Had her on some weird tea, changed her formula, put her on rice milk. All of a sudden she had all these problems with her. It was all my fault. My daughter wouldn't, and this was normal before my mom got her, but it's my fault that she wouldn't sleep in her crib. She cried when she was in her crib. She cried when my mom wasn't holding her. She couldn't leave her alone. And I was like, yeah, that's my daughter. Like, that's normal for her. Like, love her. Just love her. And but my mom was very resentful because the first year that she had my daughter was very, very rough on her. And she gave up her motorcycle. She gave up her life, her newfound freedom with no kids. And now she had a newborn and a 1-year-old to take care of. And her daughter's off just using meth, running amok, and getting arrested. And so I understand her resentment and her animosity. But yeah, those pictures just, they crushed me. And it was her, and she was crying. And she had the breathing machine, and there was like 5 or 6 pictures of her with her nebulizer on, and one picture of just the girls together. And that's the pictures I had of my kids while I was in jail. I got released in February the next year, and I went to live with my mom because she had my kids. Mm-hmm. So I stayed with her. And at this point, when Jerry got out and I got shipped to San Diego, there was no contact. He left me again. He left me again in jail. No money on my books, no visit, no letters. Like the second he got out, I didn't get one more letter from him. And I was in jail for another 3 months after he got out. And to me, that was like, I was sober. I was thinking clearly. I had, my mom telling me you need to come out and take care of your kids and stop this bullshit, and her sending me traumatizing pictures of my kids. So, and when he left me, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm not going back. This is the second time you left me high and dry, and I'll never, see my kids again if you're in my life. And so I left him. And that was the...
Yeah, you needed to break that cycle.
Yes. Yes. And I still very much loved him at the time.
Right.
And I think he loved me at the time. But yeah, it was
a bad
cycle. Yeah. And for me, it was him standing in between me and my kids.
Right.
So I left him and I moved back in with my mom, and I got a job, and I was doing really good for probably about, like, my track record, probably about 3 or 4 months. And then I found meth again at my work. My boss was doing it. And then I found out that another coworker's daughter was doing it. So I found meth again very fast again. And again, this was, for me, it was self-medicating. Like, all this stuff that happened to me wasn't being talked about. I was trying to, take accountability for my actions in that twisted way, and which just brought on more shame. So my coping mechanism was meth. So I found meth again and left my mom's house again, and found myself out in the streets again. And this time I found myself at a flop house with a lot of gang members. And I did my boosting thing again and got back into the whole making money of it. But I was staying at this one house, and a lot of people were, a lot of people stayed there intermittently. And then I ended up meeting my next boyfriend there, and he was an active gang member. And he didn't want me to boost anymore. He only wanted me to do it. And at the time, it was for your protection. I don't want you getting arrested. I don't want you putting yourself in danger. But hey, go hook up my homegirl with a whole new kitchen set. Like, you can do that. Or hook up my homeboy with this outfit or these new pair of shoes that he wants. So it was on his terms that I did that. But I had no real money because it was just me hooking up his friends with this skill that I had. And he got me a rental car. He paid for everything. He paid for all my drugs. I later learned that he was doing coyote work. So he was taking illegals across the border, and he was getting paid a lot of money for that, which is why he was like, I don't need you getting arrested. So I did that. Lived with him for a long time. He was totally mean. He would speak Spanish in front of me and in front of everybody. And I'd be like, I don't know what you're saying. And can you translate? Like he's looking at me like, I know you just said something about me. What the hell did you just say about me? Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, you need to learn Spanish. I was like, okay. So I feel like he was talking shit about me right in front of my face. And then we would get a hotel room, and he would put me in one room, and then he would go party in another room and have all his Sanchas there. And I remember we got raided one time in a hotel room, and both the rooms were under his name, and they pulled me out of my room and in handcuffs and brought me down to his second room that I had no idea was there. And it's him, his buddy, and his little Sancha chick all arrested, sitting on the bed, and they bring me in and they sit me next to her. And she's like, oh, where have you been? Like, we've been having fun, or just taunting me, right? As we're all in handcuffs. And I'm like, what the fuck is happening? Like, you just woke me up. Right. Because he wanted me to be sober. He said I was up for too many days. So he restricted the mess and made me pass out. And then so he could go run amok, basically. And so I was coming down, just woke up in this hotel raid, figuring out that my boyfriend's cheating on me in another hotel room. And she's sitting there taunting me. And I'm like, whatever. Well, she ends up getting arrested. I end up getting let go because I had nothing on me. Right. I wasn't in the party room. But that was what we did. So I think it was probably a little bit after that, that we were in another hotel raid, and he was trying to cut me off again. And I was like, not this time. And so I stole some of his stash and I put it in my makeup bag. Because he was trying to cut me off. And I didn't know it, but he kept his stash in the fire alarm. So because he was very much accustomed to the hotel raids. He's a fourth waiver. And when you rent a hotel or get a hotel and you're a fourth waiver in a bad city, the cops come and just go down the thing and see how many people are fourth waivers. And then they raid you at like 5 o'clock in the morning. Okay. And which is pretty common. And so he was very much accustomed to that. So he would always hide his drugs before he went to bed or whatever. And but I was trying to be sneaky and trying to get my fix. And so during one of these fourth waiver raids, they had us both in handcuffs and found like crowbars and burglary tools in my purse, found my makeup bag with just the tiniest amount of meth in it. And I got booked. I got booked again.
Oh my gosh.
And I was already on probation. I was on probation in Orange County and San Diego. Mm-hmm. They had consolidated my probation, so I would just have to report in San Diego. And this was technically another felony. So I had possession of a controlled substance and possession of burglary tools. And I was on felony probation already. So I get booked, I get released. Well, I get bonded out. I paid $500 to get bailed out. And then less than a week later, so I missed my court date, which was like the next week, which was like on a Thursday or Friday. And then I get picked up in a traffic stop on Sunday. So like right after, like the warrant was maybe 24 hours, 48 hours old. And they picked me up for my warrant and they booked me. And that was a year after I had gotten released the first time. So I got released the first time February 5th, 2007. And then I got booked again February 5th, 2008. And that's actually my clean date. I have not used meth since February 5th, 2008. Thank you. And during this whole time, during my whole drug extravaganza, I was visiting my kids. Yeah. Like I was there, like I said, every birthday, periodically, and like Honor Among Thieves, I would steal them the best Christmas gifts,
Yeah.
all the best toys, all the best clothes. They were all in like the DKNY and Tommy Hilfiger and, only the best for my kids, but I was stealing everything. So whatever. Yeah. But yeah, so I got booked February 5th, 2008. And I was thinking, I had seen many people do this before, in and out. It's just a drug charge, nothing, no biggie. I'll do a couple months. I might do a drug program. They might order me to rehab. Not a big deal. Well, I go and meet with my public defender, and she says they're offering you drug court, which is a year and a half, 18-month program. And it's a very strict, I think you have to like piss once a week, or you have to piss all the time and go to meetings and all this stuff. And she's like, they're offering you drug court for a year and a half. And I was like, well, can I just do my time? I don't want to do another year and a half in drug court. And she said, well, we have to like take it to trial, basically. So I didn't accept the drug court, the plea deal on the first round. I pled not guilty. And then one of the other times I went back to court, because they take you back to court over and over. And one of the other times I came back to court, she said that Orange County had gotten in contact. And she said the rule in Orange County is you were on felony probation and you violated felony probation with another felony, which in Orange County is an automatic prison term. And I was like, what? What do you mean? Like, this is only my second, third time getting arrested. Like, I know people have gotten arrested tons of times and have never gone to prison. And she goes, well, that's the Orange County rule. And she goes, and that is what they're going to do. And she goes, so you have a choice. You can request a prison term from San Diego, and they'll sentence you to that prison term, the same as Orange County, and then you'll get time served. She goes, or you can accept the drug court, the 18-month drug court. She goes, and then we'll release you to Orange County. You'll go to court in Orange County where they'll sentence you to a 16-month prison term. And then you'll get out from that prison term, and then you'll come report for drug court for another 18 months. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And and we went all the way to trial. And I remember I being walked out in the orange jumpsuit and shackles around, my hands were shackled around my waist, and walking into court like that, and seeing the manager from Blockbuster testify, saying that they had gotten wind that, or they had been told to stay on alert, that there was a couple on a crime spree throughout San Diego and Orange counties, hitting Blockbusters and TJ Maxx, and to be on the lookout. So our picture was up in all of the Blockbusters. So once they caught us at one, they were onto us basically, and had our pictures up and everything, which I didn't know. And I'm sitting there listening, pleading not guilty, going to trial,
right.
while this Blockbuster manager is saying no, we heard about you way before you got caught. And my parents are sitting in there. And so I ended up going with what my public defender suggested, and I requested a 16-month prison term, and from San Diego. And I requested that they send me to prison, and which they did. And at this point, still haven't seen my kids. My mom refuses to bring them to any visitation. Still don't have any pictures of my kids. I visited my dad visited me once while I was going to court and everything, while I was going to trial. First time I've seen my dad cry. Ugh, just thinking about it makes me choke up. But first time I saw my dad cry. And then my mom had visited me and told me that she was in contact with this woman that she met at work. I guess she was a consultant for work or something like that, who told my mom that she had connections to the governor, which at the time was Arnold Schwarzenegger. So she had connections with Arnold, and that they were going to get my case dropped. And that I was on the list to be black boxed on my transfer up to prison, which is reserved for the most heinous murderers. And it's where instead of handcuffs, they literally put your hands in the black boxes, so you can't do anything with your hands. So she told my mom that I was going to be black boxed on my way up there, and that she was working with the governor to get my charge overturned. And I was like, it's not that serious. It's commercial burglary. I'm not a murderer.
Right.
I requested the prison sentence. I'm going to prison because I requested it, because of stupid Orange County law. But yeah, and so she's telling me all this, and I'm like, okay, whatever, let me know what comes of that. And then she and that was the only visit I got from her in San Diego. And none of that happened. I don't ever know what happened. She never told me what happened, with the governor, with her meetings with the governor or whatever, which didn't exist. And I get transferred up to prison, and I'm in the prison, because there's different sections of the jail. So when you're going to trial or you're just serving time, you're in a different section. And then when it's official that you're going to prison, to the state prison, they put you in another section, and you're just waiting. You're waiting for the bus. And so I was in that section, and even in that section, I was in the low security section. So even then, I'm like, this lady doesn't know what she's talking about. She's filling my mom's head with a bunch of bullshit. But anyway, so I end up going to prison. I'm not black boxed. I end up just getting shackled, and they shackled you so loosely that all the girls on there, because it's a 6-hour drive from San Diego to Chowchilla, and all the girls took their hands out of the handcuffs, and we're all trying to sleep on each other, totally low security, not anything she was saying. So I was like, whatever. And we get to prison. We put our handcuffs back in, and we get to prison. And I'm getting booked in prison, and it's gnarly. It was an experience for sure. First, I have green eyes. They thought I had contacts in. They told me to remove my contacts, and I was like, these are my eyes. She made me touch my eyeballs, both eyeballs, to make sure they weren't contacts, and a bunch of other just traumatic shit, because they have to strip search you. And the way they did it, I don't even know if I want to tell it, but I will. Because anybody who's been to a women's prison knows. And it's not glamorous and it sucks. And it was a rude awakening. Because when you get booked into county, they have you squat and cough. And so I was used to that and shakeout. You know, even the program did more in-depth searches than county jail does. And but going to prison, they have you strip down and they put you in this huge cell. And I was in there with probably about 12 other girls. And we're all naked. And it's open on one side. It's not like covered or anything. It's open. And they have you lined up against the wall. And they tell you to bend over at your waist and spread your cheeks in your vagina. And so I comply. So do most of the girls comply. And so we're bent over, spreading our cheeks in our vagina. And there's one girl who's refusing. And the cops are like yelling at her, like, bend over, you know, like, and we're like, oh my God, dude, like, if you don't fucking bend over right now, we're going to beat your ass. Like, this is like, we want to get this over with, dude. And so that was like, I was quiet, but everybody else was like talking shit to this girl. And I was like, just bend over.
Oh my God.
And then they walk around and shine a fucking flashlight on you and have you cough 3 times while they shine the flashlight on each girl. Traumatizing.
Yeah.
Yes. So that was my entrance into prison. Yay. And I didn't want to be there. I was scared to be there. It was a whole new group of prison girls, you know, long timers, lifers, like a whole myriad of people. Like these weren't just people coming in, you know, into the drunk tank. Like these were people who were here for a long time. So that was a big adjustment. And and I got, because of my last name's Lopez, they kind of segregate the girls. So it's not as segregated as the guys. So the guys have like cars and the blacks aren't allowed to talk to the whites and the Mexicans aren't allowed to talk to the blacks or whatever. It wasn't that segregated, but they definitely tried to keep them rooming with the same race. So the black girls were, and they were 8-man cells. So it wasn't like you in a bunkie. That was like county, like women's prison is 8-man cells. And so I got put in with a bunch of Mexican girls, which was okay. But one of them was a lifer. And I remember it was probably one of the first months that I was there. It was very early on into my stay because I remember it very clearly that the Mexican women are all about cleanliness. So we cleaned our cell top to bottom every day. Every day somebody had a different chore. You know, they had tile in the shower, and the rule was you had to pour a cup from the top, and it couldn't split until it hit the bottom. So you know when there's like soap scum, it kind of like splits around the soap scum. It couldn't do that, or else the shower wasn't clean, and you had to do that every day. And but we all, you know, divvied up the chores. But this lifer, she had her white shirts strung up under her bunk to dry, and her bunkie was getting up on her top bunk and knocked her thing down, and all of her white shirts fell on the floor. Now, mind you, it's a spotless floor. You could eat off this floor. We clean it every day. And she blew up that her white shirts fell on the floor. And she started like trying to pull her bunkie off the bunk to like beat her ass. And her bunkie like curled up in the corner. So then she got a broom and started beating her bunkie with a broom for knocking her white shirts on the ground. And I was like, okay, like I'm just going to stick to myself here. I'm not going to mess with anybody. I'm just going to do my time and get out.
Yeah.
And get out. And I started a job in the kitchen, and which was fun. I liked that. It was breaks up the monotony, and I was a booster by nature. So like one of my first shifts, I stole like a block of cheese and just put it in my pants, not knowing what to do with it. Mm-hmm. Just like a opportunity presented itself, and I stole a block of cheese, and I went to my bunkie, and I was like, bunkie, I got this whole block of cheese. Like, what do I do with it? And she fucking stole it from me. She stole it from me. Oh I didn't know any better, Because that was like the only person I knew
Right.
was my bunkie, and she was nice to me, and she showed me the ropes or whatever. But she had a hookup, and she had been there I think for like 3 or 4 years before I got there, and but she had the hookup on ice, so she liked ice, and she's like, well, I have ice in my locker, and she goes, I'll just store it for you in like my ice container, and I was like, okay, cool. And I never saw it again. I never got a piece of that cheese. I never got nothing. And I'm sure she just sold it off.
Yeah.
Because I was too naive to know that's what you do.
Right.
Well, and I didn't even know who to sell it off to. Yeah. Or who to hit up or how that even works in here.
Yeah.
So she stole my block of cheese that I stole from the kitchen.
Right. It's okay.
But yeah. But in prison, I just did my time. And again, no visits. Nobody was visiting me. I would write my mom every day. Come to find out she didn't open half of them. Like half of them are still unopened in a box. I would write the kids a letter every day. I would do colorings. I would commission people to do drawings and stuff like that for them. The little things that I could do. And I started going to church in prison. I started going to NA in prison, and I really just kept to myself. And I was like, this is it. Like, I don't want to come back here. There was girls who was like, oh, it's my release day, and the first thing I'm gonna do is go take a fat one to the neck, and I'll see you girls in a couple months when I come back. Like, and I kept seeing that, and people coming back. Like, and I was only there. I got a 16-month term. I served 8 months. And I saw like 2 or 3 people come back in that amount of time. And I was like, I'm not doing that. Like, right. I'm never coming back here. And I would call my mom and I would talk to my mom, and she was telling me the same chick who said that she had connections with the governor and everything. She had a treatment program set up for me. And it was an 18-month treatment program. And I was to get out and do her treatment program. And my mom said that if I completed that treatment program, that I could have my kids. She would give me my kids back at the end of that 18-month treatment program. But I had to prove to her that I was ready to be clean. And I get that. Like, I get that. I was running amok for like 8 years at this point.
How old were you at this point?
I was 2008, 23.
Okay.
23. And from the time I was 15 to 23, I was running amok. And I get that. Like, she was scared. She didn't want me to get back on drugs. My track record wasn't good. And even though I had denied to do the drug program with San Diego County, she was basically enforcing one on me anyway through this chick who had connections to the governor. And so I agreed. And so for probably like the last 2 months of my sentence, that was the plan. I was going to get out, and I was going to go to this drug treatment program, and I was going to live there for 18 months, and I was going to get my kids back. Because I had already made up my mind that I wasn't going back to drugs. Prison was it. That was my rock bottom. I'm not going back. And so I was more in the mind space to say, yes, I'll do your 18-month program. And so that was the plan. And probably about 2 weeks before my release date, I talked to my mom, and she said, yeah, that drug treatment program fell through. I can't get a hold of that chick. So that's not happening. You cannot come live with me. I will not take you in. And if you ever get back on drugs, you'll never see your kids again. So you better do right when you get out. So I had 2 weeks to figure out what I was going to do, right, where I was going to go, who was going to pick me up from jail. And little did I know that that my sister and my best friend were like already there to like pick me up. But I didn't know that. My mom didn't tell me that. I think she just wanted to scare me, and scared straight. You'll never see your kids again if you use again. And so I called Jerry because he's always been there for me, and these are his kids too. And I told him, I said, I have nowhere to go. My mom said, if I use again, I'll never see my kids again. And I have nowhere to go. Can you help me? and he was clean at this point. And he had a job at Bonds, and he was like, absolutely, I got you. Like, come on. And he had a place to live. He was renting a room. And so it was getting close to my release date. And what I had heard was you get $200 and a bus ticket back to wherever you're from. So I was like, okay, cool. And I don't know what they say. Like, this is something that's bugged me in like prison movies and stuff. Like, they say that you can go to prison for like years and then you get your same clothes back. Like, you don't get your stuff. They send all of your stuff home. Mm-hmm. You don't get to keep anything.
Okay.
It bugs me because that's a huge thing. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't have the clothes I came in. I didn't have anything of mine. Everything was sent back to, I guess, my mom's house, mm-hmm. whatever record or whatever address they had on file, whatever I gave them. And so I had nothing. And so they take you into this trailer and they say you're being released. And they take you into this trailer of all donated clothes from like the local thrift store or something. And they're like, pick something that fits. Mm-hmm. And at this point I was clean, fat, like I gained so much weight in prison from being off meth and being healthy. And I don't, we can go into that later, body positivity, but I'm very body positive. Yeah. And so I was way big, and she's like, pick anything that fits. And the only thing that fucking fit me in there was like these elastic grandma pants that were like all baggy in the ass and the front area, and some maroon sweater that looked like I was going to church. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I guess this is my outfit because it's the only thing that fits. And so, and I think I'm getting released. Well, no, they put me in a van, and they're like, well, you still have a hold in Orange County. So you can, you're getting transferred to Orange County. And I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. So I got transferred to Orange County, didn't get my $200 gate money, never got my $200 gate money. But in this freaking grandma outfit that doesn't even fit me right. Right. And then I get rebooked. So then I get to Orange County, and I have to get rebooked and taking pictures in this whole outfit or whatever. And I met with the public defender, and it happened just like she said it was. She's like, you know, we do have to book you. We have a hold. She was, you're going to go into court. You're going to plead guilty. They're going to charge you, and then they're going to release you with time served. And I was like, okay. So I was only in Orange County for like 3 days or 4 days or something like that. And that's when my sister and my best friend heard that I was getting released. Then they saw that I was getting transferred to Orange County. So they were at Orange County jail waiting for me when I was getting rebooked. And I didn't know that. And I was in contact with Jerry this whole time. And so I told Jerry when my court date was and when I was getting released. And they had just missed me. Like, I got released 3 days later, and Jerry was there, but they were there like on my original release date. And I found that out later, and I was like, oh, thank you. Like, I didn't know what I was going to do. But he picked me up, and he brought me to his house, and I lived with him for a minute. And I was trying to find a job, and I got released in October of 2008. And it was both of my daughters. So because I got pregnant so close with them, they're 9 days short of a year. Okay. So both of their birthdays are in late November. I got released in October of 2008. And by November, I was back. Like, I was myself. I was clean. I wasn't using it again. I was in the right headspace. I threw them their birthday party. I still have the invitations that I printed out with their pictures on it and everything like that. Like, I came back and I was like expecting to be full force mom. And let's get this started. Like, I'm ready. And my parents didn't know that. I knew that my mindset had shifted. They didn't know that. They were waiting to see the results, the actions. And I'm still living with Jerry at this time. And I enrolled myself in an outpatient treatment program to prove to my mom that I was serious about being sober. I went to 2 NA meetings a week for the first year that I was out. I ended up being secretary of my NA meeting and graduating that program within 6 months or something like that. And but still living with Jerry at the time because I couldn't support myself. I couldn't get a job. And this was 2008 when the economy was shit. We were in a huge recession. I went to our local feed store to go get a job, and they had a group interview. And there was 2 people in that group interview with bachelor's degrees. And a lot of sales people were out of jobs, and a lot of construction people were out of jobs. And excuse me. And so I was going to these group job interviews as just being released from prison on parole with 6 felonies, going up against all these other people who were just out of work in their profession. And so I couldn't find a job to save my life. I went to Taco Bell and I told him, and I was very upfront, and I was like, I just need a job. Like, I just need somewhere to work. Like, I just got out of prison, here's my thing. And he was cool. He was like, what are your charges? And I told him my charges, commercial burglary. And he's like, if it was anything else, he's like, I would have hired you. He goes, but I need somebody for the cashier and I can't put you in your money. And I was like, fuck. So I couldn't even find a job at Taco Bell. And I had no way of supporting myself. And Jerry was clean and working, and he was supporting me. He bought me clothes. He bought me shoes. Like, we were, doing visitation with the girls together. I had one night a week where I had NA meeting, or like my outpatient class, that my mom would pick me up, and she'd pick me up with the girls, and I would get to go to her house, and I'd do the dinner, bath, routine, read them books or whatever, and then she'd take me to my class and drop me off, and then pick me up and drop me back off home. So I got to see, and then on the weekends, I would go to my mom's house and stay Friday and Saturday night. And and so I was like, this is cool, And again, I'm like 23 years old, still haven't been a mom, still don't know how to be a mom. Yeah. Being a mom in my own, messed up way of what I thought was a good mom, because I had been around all these drug addicts. So no matter what I was doing, as long as I wasn't using, I was a good mom, and I'm not beating my kids, and I'm not yelling at my kids. And, one time that gets thrown in my face was my oldest daughter, used to like Dora the Explorer, and they used to swing from the vines. And I've always had really long hair. And so I was sitting on the bed, and she grabbed my hair, jumped off the bed, and swung like she was Dora the Explorer on my hair. And I freaked out, and I yelled at her, and I pulled her hair. And I said, how does that feel? Like, it doesn't feel good to pull people's hair. Don't pull mommy's hair. And that got brought up in court, what a bad parent I was for doing that. But I didn't know. Like, I grew up, one of my friends' mom bit the shit out of her on the arm because she bit me once. Like, I didn't know. Right. So then, but at this point, I'm still going over there once during the week and Friday and Saturday nights, and going to my NA meetings twice a week. And my mom didn't teach me how to be a mom. She would lock herself in the room, and in what she would say is she was allowing me the space to be a mom. But at this point, I was gone for a couple years, in and out sporadically. My youngest was a month old when I left her. She was 3 years old now. They weren't comfortable with me. They were way more comfortable around my mom. And especially toddlers that age, when they're not comfortable, they act out. And I didn't know what I was doing, so I just went with the flow, and it was chaos. And I didn't do the dishes. I would cook and not do the dishes and leave a mess. And I'd do their bath and, leave the bathroom a mess and get them undressed and leave the whole house a mess. And then I would call on my mom when I couldn't get them. Like, my daughter has sensory issues. And so brushing her hair was like a big deal for her. It was an issue for her. And she didn't like me brushing her hair. So, and I could tell she was just uncomfortable with it. So I'd ask my mom to do certain things that my daughter was comfortable with her doing. And to my mom, that was me not knowing how to be a parent and just proving how inadequate I was as a mother. and the chaos that I was leaving in her house. She told me basically I couldn't spend the night at her house anymore. So the weekday visits had to stop, and I was able to come over for a few hours on Saturday, and that was it, and go to church with them on Sunday, and that was it. And and at this point, I'm like kicking ass. I'm like not using. I'm, secretary of my NA meeting. I'm signing girls' court paperwork saying that they went to NA. Like, I held the keys. I was like in it, and and she's pushing me farther and farther away from my girls. So at this point, I'm like over a year clean in my eyes. I'm a year and 3 months clean in my eyes. My mom doesn't see my clean time. She thinks I'm only a couple months clean, and I'm coming back trying to learn how to be a mom. She's not teaching me, and basically judging me and putting it in court documents on the mistakes that I make as a young mother, having never been a real mom before. So I still had to have supervised visits. But they advised her to be less restrictive. So in here it says that supervised visits can be facilitated by my brother, my sister, my dad, my stepmom, or any mutually agreed upon in writing a third party to supervise the visits. So she would have to agree to anybody else that wasn't named, that isn't family, which she never did. And then, to throw another wrench in this, so we had a court date coming up to determine all of this visitation schedule in 2009. And then my mom tells me, actually my mom didn't tell me, my sister told me that my mom was planning on moving 6 hours away during this court case, during me trying to get unsupervised visits. And she had mentioned it to me before that she was looking for another job, that the job that she was in was about to have mass layoffs, and that she was looking for another job. She was looking, the companies that I heard that she was looking were in Riverside, LA, San Diego, Temecula, like within an hour or two drive from us. And she ended up accepting a position in San Luis Obispo, which is 6 hours away. And she did not tell me that she accepted that position. My sister told me that she accepted that position like 3 weeks before our court date. So she was going to go into court and not mention it at all that she was moving. And because this was a visitation court date. And so she wasn't going to mention it. And so I found out. And she hadn't started moving anything. She hadn't started packing anything. She hadn't done anything. And she accepted something in San Luis Obispo, which was 6 hours away. And I was fighting for unsupervised visits. At this court date, I was still relatively new being sober, according to the courts and my mom. And Jerry was sober and working. I was working with my dad. And due to what my mom had written in her deposition, the judge looked at us, and basically we were like made out to be like the worst parents ever, and just judgment. I could feel judgment. And Jerry says that he remembers that the judge basically looked at us and was like, if you, because she needed our permission to move. She didn't petition it with the court. She didn't say the kids were moving. So at this date, this hearing, I brought it up, and my mom and her lawyers, and mind you, I don't even think they were court appointed lawyers. I think they were lawyers for the kids, because in these types of situations, they don't give you like a public defender, So I think it was a lawyer for the kids, and because they didn't help us at all. They were like, didn't offer us anything, no assistance. And my mom had her lawyer team, and so they looked at us, and my mom said, well, I've already quit my job down here. I've already accepted the new offer. If I can't move, then I'll be unable to financially support the children. So the judge, already looking at us like we're pieces of shit parents, said, you need to grant her permission to move with your kids out of the county. And if you don't, it's going to be detrimental to your kids. And I can't guarantee that you'll ever get your kids back. I remember just crying. Like on one hand, I had all the power to make her stay. But then on the other hand, I was being told in court that I was a piece of shit if I didn't let her move for my kids' sake. So we both gave her permission to move. And I to this day, I feel pressured. I felt pressured to do that, and so did Jerry. So then we had to go back to court and come up with a new visitation schedule. And during the interim of her moving, we had agreed on once a month visitations, once a week Skype calls. And 1 month, me and Jerry would go up there, drive 6 hours, and then the next month she would drive down to San Diego. And so it was like alternating. In the beginning, she would let me and Jerry both stay at her house because we were driving 6 hours away, and we would get there on Saturday and spend the day with the girls on Saturday, and then spend the night at her house on Saturday night, and then leave on Sunday because it's a 6 hour drive. And pretty soon, Jerry got back into drugs, so he kind of fell off. And then it was just me, continuing the visitation, continuing the Skypes. I talked to him all the time. I was still trying to go take her to court over everything, still no lawyer. And at this point, my family, like my dad and my siblings, were still kind of on my mom's side. They had seen all the trauma that she had been through getting the girls and getting them stable. And I don't want to take that away. Like you think of a foster kid, like they're emotionally, fragile. And I get that. And it was really hard for my mom, giving up her life for a newborn and a 1-year-old. And I've thanked her, and I will be eternally grateful that my kids didn't end up in the system and they are still with family. So I want to acknowledge her on that. But and at this point, my family was still kind of on her side. Well, she's just scared. She doesn't know. Like, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing good.
Prove yourself, basically.
Yeah. Don't get angry at her. Like, you put her through a lot. You just need to prove yourself a little bit more. So they were kind of on the fence. And then my mom moved, and then it got way worse. So I was driving up there once a month, and she was driving, or once every other month, and then she was driving every other month. And then I started finding out that she was coming into San Diego and coming into town and not letting me know. She would, come down on my month and wouldn't tell me. And I'd find out after from the girls. Oh, we were in San Diego this month, or we were in San Diego last week. And I was like, what? Like, how come I didn't see you? Like, what do you mean you were in San Diego this month? And so she would do sneaky stuff like that, where she wouldn't allow me access to them and wouldn't even tell me what was going on. And when I found that out, I brought it up in court. And so then she said that it was detrimental to the stability of the kids to have to travel that much once every other month. It was basically causing chaos in her home again. And so they told me that I could have twice a week Skype visitations, and once a month I could have access to every other weekend I could have access to the kids if I drove to her. So she got that. She didn't have to come down to San Diego anymore. Because it was in the court order that every time she came to San Diego County, she had to give me notice and she had to give me access to the kids. So her response to that was just not to come to San Diego anymore. And she didn't for 3 years. And actually what spurred her not coming was she came to Thanksgiving once, and I think it was in 2010, so maybe a year after she moved. She came to Thanksgiving, and one of my sisters confronted her and was like, what are you doing with the girls? Like, why are you being mean to Elise? Like, she's been doing so good. I think you need to loosen up on your rules and stuff around the girls. And my mom felt threatened, didn't respond to her, ran away. and said in court that San Diego was a hostile environment for her and the kids. And so she didn't come back down for 3 years. Pretty soon, she told me that staying at her house was causing them emotional distress, and that I wasn't allowed to stay there anymore, and that I was to get a hotel. And at first I was devastated. I was like, okay, sure, whatever you need me to do. And the first time I went up there and I had to stay in a hotel because I was used to just driving to her house. And then in my mind, I was going to drive to her house. We were going to have our visitation. And then I was just going to go back to the hotel. And I showed up at her house and I knocked on the door, and my oldest daughter, and I think she was probably 6 at the time, 5 or 6, opened the door, and she's like, Mom, and I hug her, and she steps outside a little bit, and I go to open the door and go in, and my mom's right there. She opens the door and she takes Kiara from me. She takes my older one, shoves her in the house, closes the door, and says, what are you doing here? And I was like, what do you mean? I'm here. I told you I was coming, because I had to give her a week's notice prior to every visitation. And I had to tell her what we were planning on doing during that visitation, so we could all have record of it. I was like, well, I told you I was coming. It's my visitation. I'm here to see the girls. And she goes, you are not to be at my house. And I was like, what? And I immediately started crying. And I was like, what do you mean I'm not to be at your house? Like, I'm not even allowed to step foot in your house anymore? And she was like, no. She's like, it's not in the best interest of the girls. And I'm crying at this point because my mom's like kicking me out, taking my kid away from me. And she goes, you need to go check into your hotel room, pull yourself together, and give me a call when you're right. And I was like, oh. And then she just walked away and went inside. And that was devastating. Devastating. Because not only am I getting restricted from access to my kids, my mom is now becoming my enemy.
Yeah.
Like, she's not even proud of me for staying clean for over a year. Like, at this point, even in her eyes, I was clean for 2 years and doing everything that I needed to do. And at this point, I was working construction. I was pouring concrete. And that was like my career. I couldn't get a job anywhere else. And so I made that my career. I poured concrete. I was a construction worker. And I even got my California state license for concrete work. So that was my career. And I was planning on taking over my dad's business and doing government work and all that as a woman-owned, minority-owned business, construction business, which is good money. And so I was building myself a new life, and this was just a portion that I needed. I wanted to get my kids back. And so after that, I wasn't allowed at her house anymore. And every other weekend, I would get a hotel room, and I would rent a car, which was very expensive, with no money. So I still had no money for a lawyer. And she wasn't coming down to San Diego. And we did that for probably about 2 years. And then finally I was like, okay, I'm 4 years sober now. Like, now I can get unsupervised visits. Now I can. Because at this time, I wasn't allowed at my mom's house at all. So any activities that I could do with the girls, like reading them books or doing the bath time or doing any type of routine with them, was taken away. So I would have to plan every single visit, every single outing ahead of time, a week ahead of time, just to keep them out of the house. And we would meet at the park. We would meet at the Children's Museum. I took them to an aquarium one time, and it was like the worst aquarium. It was like so bad. It was like $5 entry. And I was like, oh, I found this, aquarium, because I'm just Googling stuff. I don't live up there. I was like, I found this place in Morro Bay. It's only $5. Like, we can do it. And she's like, okay, cool. Sounds good. And we get there, and this poor seal is like stuck in this pool, just pacing back and forth. It was like the worst aquarium ever.
Yeah.
All the fish tanks were like cloudy, and it was awful. And I looked at my mom and I was like, oh man, I'm sorry. You know, I'm sorry for picking this outing. This is depressing. And she goes, yeah. She goes, I've already looked into the place. I knew this place was no good. And I was like, how come you didn't tell me? Like, how come you didn't tell me to do anything else? Well, you know, it's your weekend. It's whatever you want to do. So it's like she didn't even help me plan outings or plan anything. I wanted to take him to Hearst Castle and for an outing, and that was too far away. And Kiara had already gone to Hearst Castle with her class, so we couldn't do that. And I was like, okay, like, what do you want to do? Just meet at the park for 4 hours? And that's what we would do most of the time, the park or the children's museum. And I'd go out and I'd buy everybody lunch because that was on me. And then she would take them back to her house at like 4 or 5, and I'd go sit in the hotel until church the next morning and meet him at church, and then go to church, which I hated going to church. But that was the time that was made available to me. And that's what I did for years. So that was so she moved in like 2009, 10, and 2011 is when I filed again. Or I'm sorry, no, 2013 is when I filed again. I've talked to them recently about this and asked them, you know, what my mom was telling them. Like, what did you think growing up with me only visiting? And she said, you know, my mom never told them anything. The only thing my mom ever told them was that I was on the wrong path this whole time. And that's what I asked them. I was like, she told you that this whole time that I was just on the wrong path? And she's like, yeah, like we just thought you were just on the wrong path. But my mom just turned it all that it was my fault forever. And in probate and guardianship, I cannot reiterate enough that it's not like family law. They defer to the guardian in what's in the best interest of the kid 9 times out of 10. Where in family law, they refer to either the kid's lawyer or the mediator or whatever. And in probate, I feel like my mom had the say. Like if she said the girls weren't emotionally ready for that, the girls weren't emotionally ready for that. And they would defer to her opinion. So I got denied that one. So still visitation as set forth. So everything's my fault. I'm trying to keep their dad in their life. I'm doing everything I can, but everything I'm doing, my mom is saying is emotionally damaging my kid. And that's what she fed me for years. So I went along with everything she said. I jumped through every single hoop. And I think this goes back to the program too, where the extreme accountability, and I was trying to take accountability for everything. And more so, like, okay, I won't contact Jerry anymore. I won't try and keep him in their life. You know, like, okay, you want to say fuck him, you know. And I did that, and I've apologized to him since, and we've made amends. But and he understands that I was just trying to do what I thought I had to do to get the girls back. And then it was always my plan once I got them back that I was gonna bring him, you know, back in, because I believe that they needed him. And he messed up again, and he takes accountability for that. But I think he was like using again for maybe a year or two, and then he got straight again. But he never regained contact with my girls. My mom would never allow him to talk to them again after he relapsed the second time. So my mom at this time was getting paid by the state. She was on a welfare, and she gets paid for them like a foster kid. So she gets the same amount as a foster parent would. She made too much money to qualify for food stamps, which she let me know all the time that, you know, I don't get food stamps. You know, I don't get food stamps. I make too much money for that. And I was like, okay, cool. You want a cookie? Like, you're still getting money for them. Right. And I was paying child support, and so was Jerry. Jerry was paying child support. So she was getting this money coming in, and where was it going with that? But she had all of the state, resources. So the therapist that my daughter was seeing at this time was basically, they call it the CDC, and I think it's called the Child Development Center in San Luis Obispo. And what they did was they took therapists doing their working hours. So they were fresh out of school, out of Cal Poly, which is the college up there. And so they were fresh out of Cal Poly with a psychology degree, and they were doing their working hours. And so that's the therapist that my daughter had, was a therapist in training, basically. And this was free. So this is why my mom took her there. So then I hit up the CDC and I was like, do you offer free adult therapy? And they said, yeah. And so I signed up with one of the therapists at the CDC, the same place that my mom took my daughter to. And every other weekend, I would drive up to San Luis Obispo, get a hotel, and stay an extra night, and then go to therapy on Mondays when I was in San Luis Obispo. So I could still be within network. So the therapist that I was seeing still had contact with my child's therapist, you know, so I was thinking we could work something out. That was my way in, because they said that reunification was ultimately their goal. And you know, looking back on it now, being in years of good therapy, and nothing bad about them, but she was still learning. It was a lot of validation. So I would like complain to her about my mom or the girls or what was happening. And it was always like, oh yeah, like I validate you in those feelings, but it was never, and here's what we can do about it. You know, it was never really helpful. Mm-hmm. Yes. Thank you. It was never really helpful, but I did it just so I could say that I was in therapy because my mom told me to. And then that therapist, I think referred her to like a real therapist, and she was with a real therapist after that. And that is when my mom, like, all of her tantrums, it couldn't be about her, because the therapist told her that children who act out like that do so with the people they feel the safest with. So she's just acting like this towards you because she feels the safest with you. And that started a whole trend of Kiara's still not well, and you don't see it, and nobody else sees it because she doesn't feel safe enough with you to let it out. So I never, like, I've seen a handful of tantrums, and I know she has sensory issues. That was very real. You know, the nightmares, my mom's psychoanalyzing the nightmares because of something I said, you know, the weekend before or whatnot. And then she even goes in on this deposition, she says that the nightmares only occur after visitations or contact with me. But nobody's seen that. Mm-hmm. Nobody saw it. She had visitations with my brother, where my brother would take her. My brother was allowed unsupervised visits. I wasn't. And also with my stepmom. She went overnight with my stepmom. My stepmom's like, I've never seen anything like that from her. She's like, I'm not calling your mom a liar. She goes, but I think maybe she's exaggerating a little bit. And then once my mom had that narrative of you're not seeing it because she doesn't feel safe with you, she only feels safe with me, it was like, it was done. There was nothing I could prove. At this point, the girls are getting older. And my older girl, Kiara, has my mom wrapped around her finger. And at this point, I'm getting in her ear. I was like, hey, Thanksgiving, Christmas, you know, do you want to have your birthdays down here? What do you want to do for summer? You know, so I'm trying to get her, and we started every year we went on a camping trip after that. So every year I would get a camping trip with them as well. And to my mom, that should have been enough. But yeah, so I started pushing it, but I didn't have the right house for them, whatever. And my mom was becoming more lax, letting me take them out with my sister and whatnot, because they were older. And then I get a boyfriend. So I haven't had a boyfriend this whole time. I'm so scared to get a boyfriend to introduce them to this part of my life. And so at this point, I meet my fiance now, and in 2016, and he starts questioning everything. And he's like, what's happening? Like, why aren't, like, what's happening with your mom? Like, what's going on here? And I was like, oh, you don't understand. Like my daughter this, my daughter that, like this, it's this whole thing. You just don't get it. And so he let that go for probably about a year. And then he went on the first camping trip with us. And he started noticing, like, my mom being weird, or like trying to like keep the alone time with me and my girls, like to a minimum. My daughter said something about like the Illuminati or some kind of conspiracy theories. And he's like, what is your mom telling them? Like, what's happening here? And so he just started questioning everything. And that caused a lot of fights with us, because I was like, you don't understand, like, this is the way it goes. You have to tread the line.
Right.
Like, don't fuck this up for me, basically. And that was in 2016. And then I got pregnant in 2017 again. Oh, and that was a whirlwind. It brought up a lot of feelings. And I don't think that I had postpartum depression necessarily, but definitely having another kid without having my other kids with me brought up a lot. And I fell into a deep depression, anxiety. I didn't leave the house, almost agoraphobic. Like my fiance would have to go to the grocery store for me. I was in a deep depression. And that was in 2017 that he was born, December. And then I got laid off on my job the next year, and I was really a hermit. Like, the only time I was leaving my house was to go to work.
Yeah.
And then I got put work from home, and then I got laid off, and I just fell deeper. And then 2020, Paris Hilton came out with her documentary, and I was like, I need to get into therapy. Like, this is what needs to happen. And I started dealing with all of that. And me and my fiance, I started basically going his way rather than my mom's. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is fucked up. Yeah, like, he started basically...
Because he was seeing it from a different perspective.
He was an outside perspective.
Angle.
Yeah, and he had his own baby mama drama that he was dealing with that wasn't even that bad.
And I think, too, like, maybe in the beginning of all this, I understand why your mom wanted to protect your girls, but then how much can you try? Like, how many years has to go by? 20?
Mm-hmm.
And probably not even then. It's almost like I feel like she got this sense of control. Like, I think maybe at first it was a protection thing. And then she got this, like, sense of, like, control and couldn't let go of it. Like, and in her mind, she probably thought, to some degree, and maybe I'm wrong, but if you ever did get the girls back, she's alone. She's left by herself.
She's isolated herself 6 hours away.
Right.
And through the years too, she's isolated herself from my siblings.
Right.
And she didn't really come back until, and my sister told me this just recently. She's like, I thought when grandma died, like mom was coming back. She's like, she was down here. She was inviting us to places. She was reaching out, wanting to be involved in the other grandkids. Cause she had my kids and she has 6 other grandkids.
Right. And that's the sad part, is that she could have a big happy family and she chooses not to.
Yeah. And then she gets resentful because my dad has that now.
Right.
Because we're all close to my dad. And we've all lived with him at some point. But and I think she gets animosity towards my dad because he has what she wanted but could never truly foster.
Right.
But yeah, so Brian started basically showing me the light about how messed up it was, and that it wasn't normal, and that I shouldn't be just complying. Yeah. And I love Brian. He bucks the system every chance he gets. Definitely. He is a nonconformist. And I like to say too, our family with my youngest now, we're a family of nonconformists, because he's, over these past 4 years, I've definitely gravitated more towards his side and not my mom's. And we had our own house. We had a 3-bedroom house. We had my 1-year-old, 2-year-old. We both had good jobs. And then I tried again in 2019. And my oldest daughter was 15. My youngest daughter was 14. And at this time, so in 2020, when I had like my come to Jesus, breakdown, and finally started reaching out to help, I sat my kids down and I told them. And I was like, I'll fight for you. I'll go to court for you if you want to come live with me. Because that was kind of like the next step too. Like, well, they're 9 and 10 now. In a couple years, they get to choose. When they're 12 and 13, they get to choose where they live. Well, it doesn't work like that in guardianship. It doesn't work like that in probate. That only works like that in family court. Okay. In probate, the onus is on me, the parent, to prove that my home is in the best interest rather than her home. Okay. And I couldn't really do that. I mean, she has money. She took very good care of them. They eat organic. They do all that. Like, I felt like I couldn't compete with that. So then I fell back on, well, when they get old enough, then they'll want to come live with me, and then I'll fight, and then I won't disrupt or hurt her anymore, traumatize her anymore. And then around like 2020, I sat him down and I was like, do you want to come live with me? Like, I'll fight for you if you want to come live with me. And they both said no. They said that they liked their friends. They built a support system up there. They liked their school, which is fine. I'm not going to do that to you if that's not what you want. And she said, we just want more time with you. We want to spend the summer with you. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, let's do that.
Yeah.
And so again, I reached out to my mom, trying to do it, the right way, not having to go to court. And she turned me down again. She told me that I was being selfish and I didn't have the girl's best interest at heart, and the girl's best interest comes first. And the reason that she gave was because of the situation in my garage. My fiance at the time, still does. He smokes weed, and he had a man cave out there, and he had his record set up, and it was his smoke spot in the garage. And it's legal in California at this time in 2020. Like, it's legal. And that's what she told me, that because he smokes weed, I don't think that teenage girls should be around that. Mm-hmm. And I got scared again. I was like, shit, right. I smoke weed. He smokes weed. Like, it's legal, like, but I can't have visitation because we smoke weed. So then I got in a fight with my fiance again over that. And he's like, no, dude, like, why are you trying to change me and you when we're not doing anything wrong? Right. Like, you smoking weed does not make you a bad parent to a teenager to have them for 2 weeks out of the summer. So I didn't end up taking her back to court. That was, like I said, my breakdown, my breakdown. And I just continued going to therapy. And I got the girls on my side, basically. So we were doing vacations, anything that Kiara wanted, could talk my mom into doing. She was coming down more often, and I just kind of finagled it through them, through that. And then she started letting them stay at my sister's house. So about 15, 16 around, maybe 16, 17. She would leave them during Christmas vacation at my sister's house. Okay. But they were not to spend the night at my house, even though I had a house. I had a 3-year-old. I had a fiance. Right. Yeah. I had a job. Like, a
stable life.
Yeah, right? I had a stable life, but they were still not able to spend the night at my house alone. They had to stay at my sister's house. So in therapy, I just kind of realized that the best thing that I could do for them at this point was to instill better values in them, support them in whatever they wanted to do, because my mom was very conservative, always has been, very, very conservative, very judgmental. So the best thing that I could do was instill my influence on them and not be judgmental, just reinforce, that they were good inside and that they were beautiful no matter what. And I supported them no matter what. There's so much power in just owning your story and releasing the shame. And that's why I'm here. Because if I didn't start my healing journey until I was 35 years old, and if I can help one person start their healing journey earlier than I did, then that makes me feel good. I did something in my past has a purpose, to help someone else.
There's so many different parts of your story that are going to help for so many different reasons. Like your experience being in that program, and well, even before that, I feel like your experience with what happened with those guys, and you talking about how you felt so much shame about that, and then everything that comes with that. That first of all is going to make people feel like, wow, I'm not alone in feeling shameful and guilty. I'm not alone in having this happen to me. And then I'm not alone in feeling like I can speak out about it now.
Yes. You have to speak out about it.
Right. So that's only one aspect of so many that you've spoken about. And like I said too, first of all, and this is not to make an excuse at all, but you were so young through all those years that you were making these bad decisions. But everybody makes bad decisions. And I'm not saying, like, obviously, doing meth is a little bit worse in the stealing, but like
0 out of 10, do not recommend.
Right. But But everybody makes bad decisions.
Yeah.
You know, yours were just a little elevated, but
Yes.
you were young and you had, you know, you got pregnant young. And like I said, I do think that for maybe a certain amount of time, it made sense that your mom stepped in, and like any mom would probably do, of like, I'm going to help you out until you can get on your feet. But I think, like I said, where that starts to cross a very big line is when you are putting in all the effort. Like you are completely conforming yourself to everything that she wanted, if not more. You were driving hours with money you didn't have. And this was going on years and years of sobriety. So it's like, for her to keep basically knocking you down. I mean, I'm glad that you didn't relapse back into a dark place.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can see how if you're just fighting and fighting to be better within yourself and your parent just keeps knocking you down, how it can feel like, well, am I even better? And then feeling like, is the person I am today really better than the person I was when I was on meth and stealing? Like, and it starts to, I feel like it's very easy for these questions to start circling in your head because where's your support group?
Yeah.
You know? And it's just like for so long, I feel like you didn't have that. You only really had yourself and you didn't have much education behind like, you know, like you said, your fiance now, he kind of gave you a different angle and a different perspective. But this whole time you only had your mom's perspective. You're still young and naive and still trying to just become sober and be a good mom and whatever else. And you start to believe these things that your mom is saying.
Definitely.
Right.
I internalized it. I was still not good enough.
Yeah.
I was still not good enough.
So they're currently still with your mom.
Yes.
And then they can kind of see you when they want. Is that
so
how it
my
works?
oldest is in college.
Okay.
My oldest turns 20 this year.
Okay.
She's in college. And I see her all the time.
Okay.
I still drive every other weekend to see my youngest daughter. She's a senior in high school.
So is it still set hours based on like what it was before, or it's a little bit more lenient now?
It's a little bit more lenient.
Okay.
So a couple years ago, actually I'll say after my grandma died, I was allowed to stay at the house again.
Okay.
And then especially after I had, in 2017, after I had my other baby, then it was, yes, bring the baby.
Okay.
And Kiara was enamored with the baby.
Right.
Just loved the baby. And so that was my in too, was Kiara wanted to see her brother. Kiara wanted to see her brother.
Right.
Oh, bring Gavin. And that's what I mean when I like started using
Right.
the girls, because they had their own voice at that point.
And I think too, when you get to that age, you can start to really understand what's going on around you. I think you have a better perception of people's personality, and you can see good and bad. You can kind of start to distinguish things. So it becomes, I think, a little bit more clear.
Yeah. And the irrationalness of my mom's excuses became clear. And Kiara was old enough to speak for herself at that point.
Right. And
to
make
where
decisions.
she's like, I'm not going to be emotionally traumatized now.
Right.
You know, like stop it.
Exactly.
So it was putting in the rationalization into her irrational excuses,
right?
Which really brought us together. But I still go up there every other weekend.
Wow.
My daughter's still a senior in high school. I still pay child support. That ends in June.
Okay.
She is 18 and she's going off to college in the summer. And as soon as that happens, I never have to see my mom again if I don't want to.
Wow.
Yeah.
So all of it will technically be over.
All of it will be over in June.
Okay.
My girls are still young. I mean, they're technically adults. I was way more mature at their age than they are now.
Yeah.
But they're adults and they're going to see who she is.
Right.
And they can choose to be around her or not. And I can choose to be around her or not. And I still love her. She's my mom. She'll always be my mom.
And just like you said, like, you can love her and they can love her for everything that she did for them. And that's amazing. And that's great. But is how she treated you okay, or that situation?
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
No.
And I think that that's something that, you know, even if the girls choose to still have her in their life because she raised them, I think it's, and they will know, but you know, it's important that they know how good you were doing and that you didn't get to have the privileges that you 100% deserve to have. You know, that's just a whole different can of worms. But
yeah. And this too, like this whole thing is for me, but at the same time, like growing up with family secrets and stuff like that. Like, I don't want to just trickle it out over the next 20 years either. So it's like, here it is. Here's what happened. Here's what happened that you didn't hear about.
Right.
And listen to it when you're ready. And if it's too much, stop. Like, I don't want to have to keep, over the next 20 years, talk about the family stories so they get the full picture.
Yeah. Or like tiptoe around anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I think that says a lot too about you as a person and about you as a mother, that you're willing to just be like, okay, I'm laying it all out there. Like, here was my life before you, during you. And, like you said, whatever you want to listen to and hear, it's there for you when you're ready. And I think that that's so important and speaks wonders about you and where you are right now, honestly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Everybody should start their healing journey.
No, absolutely. And sometimes it takes like a certain turning point or something that they see or hear. For example, somebody could hear this and be like, okay, I'm ready now. Or I don't feel so alone now. Like, and I think that's the most important thing about the show and about people coming on and opening up. And I'm so glad, seriously, that you wanted to come on here and share these details of your life, because it isn't easy. And not only is it very difficult to talk about decisions that you've made and things that you've been through, in the first half of your life,
right?
But then the second half of your life, everything that you've gone through over the last so many years with your mom and your children, that's devastating. So that takes a lot of vulnerability and courage, and I give you so much credit for that. Seriously, you should not take that lightly. That's amazing.
Thank you.
And you did amazing.
Thank you.
Of course. How are you feeling? Good?
I'm feeling good. Yes.